Can
All
you hear
right,
me?
I'm going
I can
to,
hear
okay.
you. Pardon me. There is.
You can't hear me.
No, go ahead. I'm listening.
Okay.
Mhm.
You can hear me now. Cool. All right. Let's get started. Everyone can hear. Everyone's in the building. Give thanks. I just want to hail up these people for that, give thanks for that. Yeah, you've got Kelly, Gonzalez, Goddess K, yeah, Yamaha, Sankofa, greetings sis, yeah, and Uday Shaz, yeah, thank you for that, yeah. All right, sis, so let's get started. I got started on your book, yeah. It's powerful. I just
Thank
want to
you.
start there, yeah. It really took me on a journey to start with. Yeah, went through. I'm going to be, so I just want you to know that I'm going to be looking at different tech tonight, my laptop, my phone. So just stay with me. Everyone stay with me. If my face is doing this, don't worry. Yeah, just stay with me. Just stay with ZaZa. She'll keep you focused, okay? Because I had to do a few screenshots as well. Yeah, and for me, um, ebooks are tricky to keep in memory
Mhm.
when I'm highlighting and I'm reading and I'm writing on my books, it's a different experience. It goes in, right? So I had to do a lot of work this
Yeah.
week. But I wanted to the table of contents. I wanted to start really, yeah, with your choice as to why you made this book this way. Your table of contents, shows up, becoming a queen, it takes a village, the digital world, boys to men, honoring thy temple, mind, body, and spirit. So, what was behind your intention for doing it like this? Because it does comprise of lots of different elements,
Yeah.
and I noticed that you went in deep on many levels. So I'll be interested to find out why you, because people could have chosen some other areas, but you chose these, especially where you talked about the digital world. And I
Mhm.
thought you really brought, what I thought is you brought it into this 21st century and this dimension,
Yeah.
yeah, by bringing it like that. So just tell us a bit more about the journey for this book, yeah, coming to fruition.
Well, thank you. That's a great question. And first, let me say, because of our little technical glitch, I didn't get a chance to properly greet you. So, peace and love, Queen. Thank you so much for having me. Peace to all of the family in the United Kingdom and all over Europe, as well as everyone that is going to watch us and hearing my voice right now. In the beginning intro, there is a section called What I Wish Another Woman Had Told Me. And pretty much everything in the book came out of what I wish another woman had told me. Now, obviously, when I was 16, social media wasn't as big of it wasn't an issue at all, actually, for me. So there, I obviously had to, make it relevant to today, right? And because I see just in particular about the a digital world, section of the book, I see the impact that social media is having on every facet of life. And I know when I was young how impressionable I was based on what was happening with women around me, women in the culture, but also, when hip hop kind of started, catching fire, so to speak, the women who were, Queen Latifah and the sisters that were kind of representing for us that looked like us, were on a totally different frequency and vibration than the overtone or the undertone, excuse me, of, hip hop and music in general today, right? So we didn't have all of the visual representations that we have in media today and constantly seeing them, 24 hours, 7 days a week. So I felt that the digital world was important, especially when it comes to sex trafficking and these young, vulnerable, impressionable girls that are online, looking for attention and trying to find themselves, as we all do at that age. So it was important for me to let them know, like, yeah, this is a great tool, but at the same time, there are predators out here seeking out young girls that are, impressionable and vulnerable. So be careful. But going back to the broader question, what I wish another woman had told me. I wasn't really thinking conscientiously about reputation when I was 17, 18, 19, 20, but I was watching what I saw a lot of the other women in my community doing. And I knew that I wasn't going to be, a part of that, right? So looking at mistakes that I saw women making when I was coming up, and then also mistakes that I made when I was coming up, that was a big part of it as well. And I think, for me, as I've been watching and observing the world as a woman, it became, very clear to me at a young age that women have kind of consciously, subconsciously, whatever you want to call it, kind of been taking the brunt and carrying the brunt for the world, for our culture. And so I really wanted to unpack and understand that. So it was a multitude of those things. And I just wanted to, from a mental, spiritual, emotional, and physical standpoint, kind of give some resources, some information to kind of help these women and these young women, escape some of the pitfalls that a lot of women make. That was a long answer too. I hope I answered your question. Your mic's muted, sis.
Sorry, you did. Thank you. Sorry. Yeah. You did, because you did answer the question, because for me, even in the first 16 pages, and it's like a good meal. You've got to take your time. And I didn't want to rush through this thing. And you know what? What you don't know, actually, is my Earth Day was this month. Yeah. And when you came on the first time, I said, you know what? When my Earth Day comes, yeah, I want this book. That's my treat. So when you sent it to me, I was like, yeah.
Well, happy belated birthday.
Thank you. And you wouldn't have known when you sent it, and the timing and everything was just aligned. And I was like, this is the time. Yeah. So I was really pleased to receive this. It was divinely timed. And so, when I look at these, I can really relate. It takes you on a journey from, a really powerful journey from quite early on. Yeah. I remember a section, and I'll go into it right now, but within the conversation, you started talking about, I think we're now in page 5, right? So I want to take you on this journey that I've been on. Yeah. Right here. Yeah, hold on. Yeah. You have to be very, I'll do it this way. Yeah. So you take us on a journey around, the importance of redeveloping our relationships with men as well. And I think that was really powerful, because a lot of women don't have these kinds of conversations, and they don't think about redeveloping.
Yeah.
They just think, who I have been so far is enough.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I can just bring that person. He wasn't right. Yeah. Don't get me wrong. He might not be right. Yeah. Ladies, he might not be right. But also for us, we have to make peace with ourselves and do the work on ourselves to be right inside ourselves moving forward. You can't just bring the same you, to a new space. Yeah. Yeah. And pollute it with that.
Yeah.
So I really got a lot from looking at that. Though I'm a person who already looks at those things, it was nice to have what I speak on myself. It's very much a reflection of how I think.
Yeah. So
I loved that. When we started that section, I was like, okay, this is gonna be a journey. I know, it's gonna be one of those books that you cry at. Yeah. No, I love books like that. Oh yeah, you go, take me there, girl. Take me.
Well, just to your point, right, about the reassessing how we interact and deal with men. And it's funny, because anytime you start talking about the male-female dichotomy, particularly in our culture, it's like a parting of the way, the room will divide quickly the minute you start talking about, men's responsibility, women's responsibility, accountability, right? If I talk to women about accountability, for the first 2 hours, we'll be discussing what men did before we can even start talking about us, right? And vice versa, same thing with men. And I think that that's part of the real issue that we have, that among other things is that, we've been pointing the finger so long, that, we forgot to do the self-analysis and the internal focus and the internal work, so to speak. But I always say you don't have to be in a relationship with a man to have a relationship with a man, right? And if you think about the overall arc in terms of Black female relationships. We always talk about Black love, right? We always talk about intimate relationships. We always talk about marriage, in different ways. But the male female dichotomy and the relationships that we have and we develop over time are extremely important. So one of the things that I talked about is transmutation, right? A lot of times women are in spaces where they need to be alone, but because they're seeking and yearning for masculine energy, they take on relationships that are sexually based, right? They're really looking for mental, emotional, and spiritual fulfillment. But because they may not have, access to that, they take on relationships that only have a physical nature, right? Then they end up mad at the man because, hey, he's thinking we hooked up for a good time. You're really internally looking for something more, but you'll take whatever you can get, right? So now you're upset with him, but you never actually established the right level of respect and alignment, so to speak, from the outset. So I think that this concept of transmutation for women, having relationships with men that aren't sexually based, right? But we have men in our lives that can help us, that can challenge us, that can guide us, that can keep us focused, right? And cultivate the masculine energy within. Because a lot of the strong Black woman element that we see, and a lot of it's perverted, and some of it's just, what's developed over the course of time. A lot of that strong Black woman energy is just masculine energy that is perverted or that hasn't been properly cultivated, right? You grew up in a war zone, you're raising a child in a war zone. You have to have strong masculine energy in order to endure. Just living in America, for instance, Black women in particular have to be in touch with their masculine energy or yang energy, right, in order to maintain. But the problem is a lot of us are too masculine focused, right, and we don't have a balance of feminine energy and righteous feminine energy. So those transmutation type relationships with men can help us to be soft in places where we're normally strong, right, because we're getting the right type of guidance from a man. And then the other thing is, the feminine energy is nurturing, it is compassion, it is loving, right? It's all of those soft, flowery, beautiful things, but it's also challenging and critique. And I think that when we talk about, the male female dichotomy, because we want our women to be soft and this notion of what we think of what feminine is, we have to remember that, women are the intuition, God's intuition, so to speak, right? The right side of the brain element when it comes to the male female dichotomy. So a lot of women are standing back and cheering our men and a lot of this madness, and we need to be challenging and critiquing them with love, of course. But yeah, those are some of the things that went into, that part of the book.
I hear that. And I appreciate that insight that you're about to give. And I think when I look at young people, what you've done, you've really moved them from a place of stagnation, to evolution, if you like, then. Yeah. Because what you're doing is getting them ready as a young woman who hasn't maybe had her intimate experiences yet. She is preparing herself. When women are young, you're sort of cultivated to be wives.
Yes.
And then we are, and then you have Disney on top of that. And then you have whatever's going on in society to break up that structure right now. And so what I see with your book, it gives the young people, young women who are going to take a look at this, and young ladies who are going to take a look at this, it helps them to, society's got them going in all sorts of directions. It's a constant contradiction.
Yes.
But what you are doing for them inside of this work is training them to be self-disciplined, in their thinking processes around the males, around themselves. So that's what I really see from that. I look at this piece here, and I thought this was really good. And I wanted to ask you why you chose it. Feminine energy involves heeding the messages of our emotions and taking the time to care for our physical bodies and the earth herself. It means listening to and receiving new ideas and taking in what other people feel, and then putting it all together to better understand how to interact with someone else in a way that benefits both people. That's just what all good mothers do automatically. This is
Yes.
how the lost sacred female energy can work in the modern world. And each of us is part of it. We've tried war and conflict and being alienated from our bodies, our emotions, our pain, and our needs. How about we trying something else?
Yes.
Dr. Christiane Northrup. And I thought about that piece, and it was a really powerful statement. And I wanted to ask you to why you chose that piece and what that piece really kind of means to you, and ask the reader.
Well, yeah, and you said a couple of things. The idea that women are or girls are cultivated to be wives, right? Men are cultivated to be husbands. I'm talking about from cultural in a cultural setting. That doesn't mean that there aren't exceptions to the rules, right? That good men raise their sons to be. No, that's not what I'm saying. But society wise, men aren't nurtured from the beginning and from the outset. To cultivate your decisions and your choices based on what husband you choose, and what the dichotomy of your family is going to be. Will you have children? Will you not have children? Will you have children in lieu of work? Or will you work in lieu of children, right? That's not even but when it comes to men, there's a vast, wide open array of decisions you could make, right? So first of all, we need to stop that, because while a having a child, and as a mother, I say this emphatically, having a child was the greatest initiation for me into womanhood, right? Because there's no greater lesson than parenting, right? And having to put another soul's well-being in front of everything, right? That's a totally different level of living as a woman and as a parent in general. But I only had one child because I have so many goals and aspirations for my life and for myself, and one of the big ones being to really have a clear and strong foundational relationship with God, right? So I seek God in everything. I seek God in my experiences. I seek God in my research. I seek God in my breathing process, right? So I have a very strong yearning that was with me when I was born to develop and nurture and cultivate this relationship with the Creator, God, Allah, nature, Mother Nature, whatever you want to call it, right? So there's that. So how can a woman who has been kind of shaped and molded in this space where you're only supposed to be here, but my goals and aspirations are up here? How do you juxtapose those two worlds, right? So what I want for our daughters to understand is that self-preservation is the first law of nature, right? So instead of starting out based on when I have a family, when I have children, when I bring these things together, then I can start to understand myself in the world. No, I want to start to understand myself and the world, right, from my individual sovereign perspective. Because when you're moving in the world like that, you attract a man that is in alignment with your same goals and aspirations. Right now, most women are vibrating a frequency of I'm alone. The statistics of the male-female ratio are low. Will I ever be able to find a man? Now we're dealing with LGBTQ men, which, lowers the spectrum of how many men we can actually, fit the narrative, so to speak. Someone actually came on the last video that I did, a gentleman, I believe. He said, everything you said sounds great, ZaZa, but the bottom line is men outnumber women, or women outnumber men across the planet, and the numbers just don't add up. And I said, well, for me, those things aren't a part of my reality. In my world, a woman that is focused on a higher internal vibration and frequency is going to attract a man that is in alignment with that same vibration frequency. It's science, it's mathematics, right? We can prove it. So instead of me thinking about that lack-based consciousness, i.e. statistics, all that, no, my only goal and job is to, be internally focused, to cultivate a certain sort of vibrational resonance. And then when I'm ready for a relationship, it has to happen, right? So pivoting from that into, talking about if you think about it, and there's a certain section in the book where I talk about this, I think it's the one of the only way a man can control a woman is by controlling himself, right? That statement has upset men over, because I've been using it for a long time. But in that particular section, think about the world that we live in and the amount of wars that we've experienced, right? Not just from Europeans, but even when we go back to Africa, right? Some of the things that we were involved in as far as, war and whatnot. How much safer, how much more in harmony or in peace would our planet be if women were at the table, where those decisions the decision to drop, Hiroshima and Nagasaki, for instance, where we allegedly, not we, they, killed millions of people with a nuclear weapon, right? Imagine if a righteous, divine, feminine energy and presence and consciousness had been present. Whoa, wait a minute, what are we doing? Do we understand that if you drop this atomic bomb on this area, that this is going to affect generations to come? What about the effect on the planet, right? So that emotional kind of full scale picture that women have, right? We because we give birth to both sexes, we don't have, we don't operate from the world from a linear perspective, because we've got to be concerned about men and women. I have a son. So for me to just come out trailblazing like, yeah, women's power, when I have an 18-year-old son who's becoming a man, would be foolish, right? But a lot of women aren't operating thinking about both sexes. So you look at feminism, you look at a lot of the women's organizations, you look at a lot of the conscious Black women. When has there ever been a full-fledged conversation about abstinence and sexual discipline for women? Right? We talk about what men need to do all the time, but where is a real strong collective movement and conversation and focus on abstinence and self-discipline? And I'll say this, the last thing to address this, in the What I Wish Another Woman Told Me section, most women will admit, either to themselves or publicly, a lot of the men, dare I say most of the men that they had sexual relationships with probably should have just been friends. And when right, you let the church say amen. You let the church say amen, right? So when we go back and do that body count, right? When we go back and do that body count and start really assessing the trajectory of our lives and how much time we spent in relationship pockets, focusing on his business, focusing on his job, focusing on helping him get his mind right. And then he didn't even end up being the one. So you spent a year or 2 years or 10 years helping to cultivate, this idea of a man or the relationship or whatever, and completely neglected yourself the whole time. And this is a reality. I've done this.
Yeah, we've done it. We've all done it. Wondering that. I love that. You know why? What I got from when I went through, I perused the entirety of the book, in terms of perusal. I was left with, and I wrote a statement, and I thought, what do I see about this book? What do I get? And I said, and I wrote this down, and I said, this book tells me and other women that we're not looking after us. If we're not looking after ourselves, this is going to tell us that we're not really looking after self. Yeah, like you can eat all day, you could be vegan all day long. Yeah, you can have your alkaline water. You can wear your Shanghai. Come on, everybody say amen.
Amen. Yeah.
I feel so quiet now.
Yes. Yes.
But what's going on?
Yeah.
And you know what? I loved it because I read a lot, and I do a lot of work on myself. I'm always checking myself out, abstinence myself, and I know, and our sister and I, we're on a abstinence conversation journey. Two of us are like, we're talking about this and we're reasoning on it, and it's like, there's just us two at the moment. We're just doing it as a team. But we're seeing the results. Seeing the results.
And I'm first of all, let me just salute both of you right? And where two or more are gathered in my name, right? So all it takes is two, right?
I've been doing it for a year. To be fair, I'm about to do year 2. Yeah.
Yeah, well, what I'm saying, I won't even tell my number, but I have definitely been consistently internally focused. Thank you very much. I try to stay away from saying certain things because I'll look up and have 10 emails with some weird sexual.
I know. Say nothing.
You know what I'm saying? So, and that's another thing in the bigger scheme of things, like this whole reality, the sexual dichotomy, the constant sexual, energy and focus is keeping people locked in that frequency, so to speak, right? So now here in this day and time where we're all trying to figure out how to navigate all the insanity, what you're talking about is one of the solutions. And people, I'm tired of talking about the solutions. What's the solution? Be disciplined.
Absolutely.
Right.
100%.
And especially because with the technology and the science that's happening right now, the ability to be disciplined, right, and to be internally focused in this time now where everybody's just kind of like indulgent, let it all out, turn up, turn down for
well,
what?
you go there in your book. You talk about the difference between attention and respect.
Yeah.
And then when we're in a situation right now, the self-discipline becomes even more important. For those who don't know, Facebook are creating a virtual internet. Yeah, that's where they're going, right? So imagine now, you got this, and then you got this, mouth covered, eyes closed, or eyes away, and we know that body language is something like 94% of our communication. Yeah. So you're going to remove that. What kind of people you're going to have after that one? Yeah, because the attention economy is a serious thing right now. But it's the psychology of marketing is massive. It's a huge industry, and that's what our pop-ups are for. That's what the algorithms are for. That's what the cookies are for. We know these things, and it does take discipline, and disciplining yourself on social media, whether it's you're fasting from social media at certain times, or and your internal fast, but it's also my thing is all about how your mind is fasting. Is it, we got, when we talk about this section here, when it says, I will commit to having positive expectations for my life. I take full accountability for my thoughts, feelings, and actions. As I discover patterns that are holding me back, I will face them head on, ready, willing, and able to experience a life filled with abundance. I love that, by the way. Ashe. Yes, so shall it be.
To your point, and I said this in the book about this, the indulgence and discipline, right? Right now, we live in a world that's all about indulgence. It's all about indulgence, and that's an inversionary, way of looking at the world, which is what the devil or Satan or whatever you want to call it, is operating. It's all good. Do whatever you want. Have as much as you want. Eat the whole cake. Don't just take a piece. You know what I'm saying? Yes, men can have children. We're working on the science. You don't have to be, with a woman if you want to procreate yourself. Just give us time, right? So we live in a world that has turned all of the regular organic elements of humanity inside out, right? Everything, swing from the chandeliers if you choose, right? But the thing about it is, when we look back at our ancestors and all of those great cultures, there was always a balance between indulgence and discipline, right? So that's particularly in our culture, right? Black people. And when I talk about goddess versus queen versus concubine, right? And that series that I'm doing right now, it's really to kind of let girls and women see, like, listen, attention and respect are not the same thing. You can get attention easily. You can go online and do a video poking yourself in your face with needles, and it can go viral. 2 million people will tune in because it's so absurd in the audacity. Right? But you do a video talking about, as a woman, be careful out here. I was off the hook when I was 15, and I, went through all of these experiences, and you'll barely get any interest. Right. So we're living in a world where salaciousness and gossip and, how far can the crate challenge, right? Imagine that Black people in America their progenitors, and I know it wasn't just only us, but for the most part, us here, our athletes and celebrities were actually doing this challenge that was so absurd and so foolish and so stupid, and everybody was captivated, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's a difference between laughing at you and laughing with you, right? I think I need to let Black people in America, specifically women, know there's a lot of people in the world that are laughing at you, not us, you. So the backflipping and the jungle gym, acrobatic madness that you're doing online for attention and for likes, the world is not looking at you and respecting you. They're laughing at you, right? And if you understand history and what our women have been through, and African women were throwing babies off of ships, and Sarah Bartman and all of this long...
It's a disrespect. It's a straight disrespect.
So disrespectful. You know what I'm saying? So
our ancestors, like when you think about Harriet Tubman and all the greats, the Sojourner Truth, you think these people, went through all of that. Yeah. We're here today, right now, because our ancestors did not throw us in water. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Our ones, the ones that made it, we're here because of it. And this is what we do with our time.
Yes.
Here, now. And and what's worse is that in this time, in this climate, right now, people acting like there isn't a climate to be concerned about.
Yeah.
Remember, the Great Challenge came out inside of this time.
Yes.
Yeah. Yes. So people are, needing extra attention. They're not. You have a section about your worthiness, hustling for worthiness, It's
and what are you without the stimulation of the world? What are you when you log off of Instagram? What are you when you log off of Facebook, right? And this is where, and in my book, Black Matters Volume 2, I talk about this weird mixture of vanity and insecurity, right? That we're seeing as a culture from women. Listen, I've taken selfies before. If you're taking 50 selfies to get one good selfie to put on social media, right? But that's a reality though, right? So it's this constant emphasis on physical appearance, right? And it's keeping us away from the real focus, which is, if we're spiritual beings having having a human experience, and we are, how much time are we spending cultivating the spiritual aspect of self, which is the greatest part of who and what we are, right? How much time are we actually spending on that? But it goes back to what we talked about before. We don't live in an environment that cultivates that type of understanding and perspective for women. It's once you get a husband, you come into the world, attract a husband, and then kind of set, figure out everything from there. Yes, you may go to college, but you're going to college to learn how to fit into a world that's not really destined for your highest and best self. All women don't want to have children. Is that a problem? Not if we're living in the middle of a global pandemic and she's got a holistic doctor, nurse, engineer, contractor, you know what I'm saying, type of mindset. We need all hands on deck, right? There's a lot of women out here that want to be scientists. There's no reality that cultivates the scientific mind in women. So for me, when I did the Goddess versus Queen, as I'm doing this web series that I'm doing now, I'm sitting back and after I did the video on Sunday, I go through this thing where I have like this strong feeling of, I won't call it depression because that's not the word I want to link it to, but it's this heavy weight of, there's so much focus and emphasis that really needs to be put on this scientific war. Right? There really needs to be this technology, right? Which is where my real passion, my real strong passion is about understanding the science of God, the nature of reality, and also understanding, I'm looking for a cure for the shot, right? That's where my mindset is. But at the same time, I have to stop and tell our people, are you really still eating McDonald's? Are we really still having this conversation? You want to write me and say, well, I need to get this out of my body. Well, question one, have you fasted since you've taken it? Let's start there. People that write me and say, I need a detox. I need to get that. I need to figure out what I got to do because I keep my job. Do a 10-day fast and then come back. And let's have a conversation, right? Because that's only a portion of where we need to be focused. What the mental and spiritual and emotional fortitude that is going to take to make it through this while we're mastering TikTok challenges, right? So I just think, and the number is going to be very small. The Bible says 144,000. I used to think that number was absurd. Now that number is
not anymore. Not anymore.
Now that number is starting to make a lot more sense, right? But what is the qualifications for those 144,000? Just to say no to the you know what? No, that's just the beginning.
No.
Right? So for women, and let me just say this just so I don't forget, the inspiring women to, because we need scientific application from a feminine perspective. Yes, we have scientists all over the world that can break things down, but how many women that have a spiritual focus, right? That understand that our decisions have to be made for the male-female dichotomy. Our decisions have to be made for planet Earth. We have to keep the birds in mind. We have to keep the whales and the sharks and the fish in the ocean in mind, right? The statistics of salmon and the mercury poisoning of salmon. Like, you can't tell me that there's righteous, divine, feminine mindsets in those environments making decisions on what's happening with our planet. A woman wouldn't create a Hummer. I'm talking about the truck that you have to spend $150 to fill up, right? That's not a woman's, you know what I'm saying? We're not going to create this huge box go-kart with when you 10-foot tall rims, and we don't, you know what I'm saying? Like, no, that's not good for the planet. It's not good for you, right? It's not good for any of us. And I'm making a mini point about a bigger conversation, right? But if you're thinking about the carbon footprint, so to speak, right? It's not going to be on the table. Yeah.
I hear that. No, I mean, look, the way in which you're, communicating from this space and this book, what it tells me is that you've factored in as much as you can from, when you talked about women and their ecosystem.
Yes.
Yeah. You factored in, what it's going to take for us to sustain ourselves. Yeah. Sustain our minds, our bodies, our thinking, our relationships. Yeah. Our healing, our breath. Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to go to this section here. Yeah, this is the section for me where I paused. I was like, okay, I want to sit down with this one.
Yeah, that's good though, because that's early in
the
book.
I love that. I love books like that where you and I didn't want to rush this. It's not one of them books that you can rush just for for the purpose of the show. Like, I wasn't going to do that. Yeah, I wanted to take it in because I am as a daughter, I'm the, if you like, the second oldest. Yeah. I'm actually one of 14 from my father's side, but that's another conversation. And another day, family, another day. And my father's a Rasta. Say no more. Not saying that all the Rastas are like that. I just know how I was now. Okay. But I love my I love my siblings. Like, I've got all these siblings. It's amazing. We know each other, so it's great. But on my mother's side, I remember that I wasn't raised with my siblings, if you like. I didn't get to know them until later on. So I was raised with kind of fairly small, three of us. And I remember when my sister left home. Yeah. And I was in the middle of like my, if you like, my GCSEs, which is, equivalent to your, SATs or, however you do your grad, ending school. And this section kind of popped out at me because I had already seen something earlier this week, last week, in fact, that had my attention. And so this kind of aligned with it. During childhood, we learn to compromise ourselves to survive the challenges of life. Sometimes compromise can be as simple as a young girl conforming to the desire of her father and brothers to watch a war movie rather than the love story she would have chosen because she's outnumbered by males in the household. A constant pattern of feeling discounted in a family of origin often translates later in life to feeling unheard in the workplace or in friendships and relationships. I just want to stop there, because for me, I wasn't raised with many males early on, but I have lots more males around me now, brothers and things like that. But I'm a mother to 3 sons. So I know what it's like to be outnumbered.
Yes.
Yeah. And Marvel and DC to take over your household.
Yeah. And let's just, because I know, because I speak to and interact with a lot of men, and because I'm always conscientious of kind of how, publicly, we discourse and how men kind of interpret our perspectives, right? So I know a lot of men will hear that statement and be like, what? That's not a big deal.
Yeah.
I just wanted to watch a movie. Like, what's the big deal, right? But right? But over time, right, you're consistently having to put your own personal desires or goals or little things. It can be little things.
Yeah.
So over time, if you're constantly having to back shelf yourself, right? That's how, and a lot of women grow up in the world back shelving themselves in relationships. Well, he wants to do this, but I want to do that. We'll focus on him first, and then I'll wait. You know what I mean? And then we'll focus on what I want. And then you look up and you're 40, 50 years old, and you've never really got a chance to do the things that you purposely desire, right? So I think it's those little things that kind of chip away at the spirit of women, so to speak. And I can't tell you, sis, and I know you'll relate to this, how many women over the past 10 years specifically that I've either talked to at events, emailed me, doing workshops, courses, all the work that I've done, that got to a point in their lives and was like, wait a minute, who am I? What do I want? Got the kids off to college, husband successful, or got a divorce, or whatever the nature of the personal relationships, but got to a point in their lives, usually it's in their 50s or 60s, where they stop and look around and nothing in their lives feels familiar to that original goal and aspiration they have for themselves.
Yeah, listen, I can relate to that when you spoke about how motherhood changed you, like it was the transformation. For me, anyone who knows me prior to motherhood, I'm not even going to pretend I wasn't wild. I was. I'm not going to pretend. Yeah. Performing arts, dancer. Yeah. Say it. Say no more.
Say no more.
Say no more. But I always knew in my heart, like, when I was 10 years old, my mother was kind of like a British Black Panther then. And my father being a Rasta. So my mother at 10 years old had me read, the speech of William Lynch. And at that point, even though I knew I wasn't, in my, active consciousness at that point, I always knew that when I became a parent, that consciousness was, going to have to be the forefront of my thinking. And so I recognized, even when I had, and I always wanted sons first, I had this, conversation with myself about, if I have a daughter, great, but I want my sons first. I believe, I'm quite a traditionalist, and and there's that whole protection, sons, daughters. That's what I wanted. So I got my 3 boys. We're just waiting for the girl. I'm under pressure. The boys got me under pressure right now.
I understand. Trust me.
They're like, Ma, we're like this because we don't have a sister. No word of a lie. That's what they told me. So, no pressure there. But, one of the things I recognized is, that transition. I didn't even know if I remembered it was a part of me, like you come across something in your youth and then you park it mentally in your subconscious, and then the day arrives where you have to use it. And it was one of those moments. It's like, okay, it's on. And so for me, I recognized that choice and choosing to be a mother, and I knew that I always wanted to be a good mother. It was one of those things for me. And so allowing myself to nurture myself into that, and obviously out of that I've become a doula. So, and that was the transformation for me. Like, people who know me prior to having children can't even believe the person I've become. Like, they're like, wow. Like you. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I recognize that. And so going back to what you were saying about now having boys, you know, you want your sons, you know, we also, you know how it is. We have to be very clear with the universe what we want. Yeah. We have to be
Yes.
so clear. Yeah. Because we're not clear, things are going to come up and we don't put in the detail. We need to put in the detail, like, you know, you're accounted for, you're, you know, these kinds of things. And it does take effort. I have to admit, it takes effort for my boys to often get, okay, you know what, mom's going to want to watch that, or mom's not going to want to watch this, or I fortunately, I'm one of those moms who was always kind of a tomboy. Yeah, I used to play
Mm-hmm.
five-a-side football, and you know, I'll wrestle with the boys, and so I can do all of those things. But I also let them know, yeah, that at different times I have to let them know that, you know, before I was your mother, I was a woman.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so, you know, as they're growing older, and I've got one in puberty right now, and we're having conversations about girls, and we're having conversations about, okay, you know, how you treat women, and mum being the first person that you learn that with. Yeah, you learn how to care, you learn how to, you know, empathize, or you learn how to protect. Yeah. So we
Yeah.
have those kinds of conversations inside of our family. But yeah, it's that balance and women. And I remember when I had my very first son, I was totally immersed in motherhood. That, you know, when you talk about completely losing your identity, like no one called me by my name for
Mm-hmm.
like 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I went on a course and I put a name badge on, and it was like, oh yeah, because
Mm-hmm.
everyone called you his mom, you know,
Yeah.
mom,
Yeah.
yeah, oh mom, or mom at the gate, or mom there, or mommy. It was just mommy, 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 yeah, which
Mm-hmm.
was beautiful because I now had this beautiful title, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But I was like, okay, there was this kind of deconstruction going on at the
Yeah.
same time. Yeah. And so it took me some time. It took some time to kind of get myself into the tune of, okay, how do I balance this? And it's always going to be a delicate balance when you're a parent.
Oh yeah.
But my children are learning now as they get older. You know, I've got a 21-year-old and a 7-year-old and an 11-year-old, and they're learning, especially when it comes to like my cycle. Yeah, they're all, you know, the two older ones, they're learning about that. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
you know, because they have to know about certain things. So, you know, I'm having conversations with them about, okay, I'm going to maybe need that, or maybe need the lavender, or the chamomile, or tea, or, you know, and so teaching them, if they don't, you know, that the art of being able to look after me,
Yeah.
because I know that it's going to have an impact later on when they're looking after their wives, their girlfriends, yeah, their partners.
And can I say something? That is that what that whole line of thought and conversation that you just had is cultivating righteous feminine energy in boys and in men. And that is extremely important. And that's what I, talk about, having relationships with men, but without having to be in relationships with men, right? So as a mother, there's the mother-son dichotomy. As an auntie, there's the auntie-nephew dichotomy. As a grandmother, there's a grandmother-grandson dichotomy, right? And just as a woman in general, and how I move in the world, particularly with Black men, particularly with Black sons, right? I am operating because I understand the pressure and the turmoil that has come, right, with the legacy of being a Black man under the system of racism, white supremacy, right? But we also have to be careful to not enable, right, and weaken our men, because we're so focused on the war outside the doors that before he even steps outside the doors, he's already brutalized and beat up psychologically, right? Because we've kind of been raising our sons in fear. But one thing I really want to emphasize, and I want to make sure I make that point, that care and empathy that you're talking about, that you're raising your sons to understand, not just raising them with care and empathy, but teaching them how to express care and concern and compassion for women outside of just the woman that you're involved with, right? That's very big. But if you think about this, we actually live in a world where boys are preferred over girls. And when you find out you're pregnant, the father is happier when it's a boy, or really wanting a boy, right? And I know this doesn't apply to everybody, but this is a real reality to the culture that we live in. You look at China, one child policy, and then you have a daughter for your one shot, and then it turns out to be a girl, and you grow up hating the fact that you had a daughter because, you know, the family, you know, legacy, whatever. But just this idea that there is a reality, a conversation, an ideology that boys are better than girls is mind-blowing to me, right? And it's so disrespectful to God. It's so disrespectful to the creation process, because obviously the woman is, you know, if anything is closest to God, it has to be the woman, because the womb is a replica of what's happening within the universe, right? But that's something that really stood out to me. And even in the book, the section that talks about the abuse towards women and how women are really no sacred or valued or protected anywhere in the world collectively, right? I mean, that is a really, you talk about spiritual warfare and what's happening on the planet right now. I believe that the male female dichotomy is one of the biggest, you know, spearheads for the divine judgment that is taking place on America and on this world in particular. Men have to atone for what they've done to women, for what they continue to do to women, not just women, but our daughters as well. I don't know if you heard, there was a story about in Philly, a woman was raped on a train, and the rape lasted for 40 minutes. And they stopped at multiple sites, train stops, people getting on and off, and people stood around and watched with the, recording on their cameras, but nobody intervened on a 40-minute rape taking place on a public train.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Right.
How did we get here? So I say
the problem is someone would have filmed it. Yeah. You know, this is what bothers me. Yeah. There are I know that it's important for us to get, it's important to collate evidence. I get it.
Yeah.
But at what cost?
Yeah.
Yeah. At what cost are people going to watch something happen just to say that they got the footage? Do they even get involved? These same said people who take the footage, do they even get involved in the actual making a witness statement, etc., etc.? Half the time, we don't hear nothing from them. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So,
so let me say this, right?
Go
Because
ahead.
I'm getting ready to put up a post on my social media pages, which is probably going to cause some controversy. It's about a very, very prominent rapper, conscious rapper, very involved in the outset. I don't want to say his name just because I don't want it to become a thing before I even put it up.
Sure.
But, there's footage of this gentleman, and this is somebody that I over the years have promoted, supported, been an avid fan, follower, or whatever. There's video clip of this gentleman basically saying that he doesn't care about the situation that happened with Africa Bambaataa and the alleged rape of him raping boys over the course of his career, right? It's a whole big thing. But the fact that this gentleman publicly said he doesn't care whether he did it or not, right, is a problem for me. And I just became aware of this situation because somebody sent it to me and it blew my mind. But our culture, we have this thing where we want to promote men and especially for us, right? Because we're thirsty for divine masculine energy. We're thirsty for masculine guidance. We're thirsty for strong, characteristic, men that love their culture and we're thirsty for that, right? So a man can come and represent 60% of that, right? And because we see that 60%, we will applaud him and uphold him and praise him and completely ignore the 40%. I want to cuss, but I don't know if it's appropriate on this show. So you know what I'm saying? We'll ignore the 40% madness and insanity in order to elevate this 60% of good, right? But the problem is we're ignoring all of the subtleties, right? So this ongoing thing where we don't really stand up for our children. How could sex trafficking be the largest or the highest rates in Atlanta, the most predominantly Black and culturally conscious, supposedly, city in America, right? And Black girls are being snatched off the streets all across this country and taken to Atlanta and sold for money. There's no collective agenda from our men, let alone our women. Right? So we're all kind of standing back and, inadvertently letting pedophilia get a pass. So my point that I'm going to make with this particular gentleman, and he had the audacity to fix his lips and say, I don't care if he did it or not. He's a leader in the community, and we need to focus on him being a leader, opposed to the fact that he could have potentially, allegedly, whatever language you want to use, not only molested one Black child, but hundreds or 100 Black children over the course of a career, right? So in my mind, we talk about ancient Africa, there wasn't a big hoopla about whether or not you did it in those cultures. If there was enough evidence, you're going to get your hand chopped off. You know what I'm saying? You're probably going to end up dead, right? So I feel like we've become so weak and so complacent when it comes to our children. The fact that these shots are getting ready to be mandated and our babies are in these schools and where's the strong masculine force? Like, no, we're not doing that. You come in this community and try that, right? Where is it? Is there?
Well, Dr. Is it Reverend Matthews' work? Yeah, he talks on metaphysics himself, right? It's a very powerful brother. I came across him recently, and he talks about, our people being first frequency and others, being second frequency, and he was saying something that really kind of touched me, and it correlates to what you're saying in terms of he says, and I quote, we are first frequency people having a second frequency experience. We're having their experiences. We're living out their stuff. We are, assimilating what they do. To the point we don't, we're so lost inside ourselves. All of these kinds of, remember, we keep forgetting that it is them that over-sexualized us. It's not, we didn't go around doing that in our villages and our towns. We just didn't do that as an indigenous society. That's just not who we were. So anything that looks outside of that, we have to be mindful. Don't get me wrong. We want to look beautiful, and that's okay. Being beautiful is okay, or being, handsome is okay. But when we start crossing these boundaries, we start crossing these lines and blurring these lines with children and young people and who's underage, and this, over this course of this climate, how many people have come out, inside of this climate, different people, it's coming to the surface, their story, and their back and what's going on inside the background there.
Well, okay, so let me say a couple of things to that, right? In terms of the first frequency and the second frequency piece, I would love to look into this gentleman, because that sounds like a really interesting, metaphysic perspective that I'm always.
You'll like him. I'll hook you up. You'll like him. He's an American dude, as it goes. You'll like him. He's heavy. He's heavy.
What I will say is this: the problems didn't start with Europeans. And we have to, when you go back to looking at the science of it, right? The dominant versus the recessive gene, right? And how, Black people, we create all races, right? So that dominant versus recessive gene scientifically is how white people came to be, right? So whatever is within them was originally within us, right? Now, I know there's caveats to that, because they say, whether Europeans went up into Europe and because of the climate and because of the experience, they went to war with nature, thereby going to war with God, thereby going to war with all of the indigenous people across the planet. There's caveats to it, right? There's nowhere in history where we've seen our people go around the planet and rape and abuse and kill people, right? So we know we give full credit. Let's be clear. We want to give full credit and attributes to Europeans for what they've actually done to us and to our planet. But it didn't start with them, right? So that concept of higher and lower self, if they understood that in Kemet, then it was already there. And they did. The Pharaoh's crown, referencing Upper and Lower Egypt, while it's talking about landmass and physical proximity, the metaphysic part of that language, or part of that lesson, is that the higher and lower self represents upper and lower Kemet, right? So if they were cognizant, we know Egypt and Nubia were warring before white people ever came along. It's in the temples, right? Now these were family spats. Nobody was taking people and raping them and having children, but we were having issues before Europeans came along. Hatshepsut was actually fighting, had internal fighting going on in her temples because the men were trying to silence her and limit her power as she was a ruler, right? So there's a lot of things that was happening before Europeans came on the scene, which is why Europeans ever came on the scene in the first place. And I think we have to be cognizant and careful about putting everything on them and not being a little bit
responsible, yeah, and accountable. You're right. You're right.
Now going back to the brilliance of the first frequency versus the second frequency and that whole concept, which I'm very intrigued by, right? The time frame that we're living in now is all about frequency. So if you are a Black man or a Black woman living in Europe or living in Africa or living in America or anywhere around the planet, your ticket into the hereafter or the kingdom of God is not your skin tone, it's your frequency. And it is very, very, very important for us to understand that. Now, as a melanated being, do you have extra backup, or do you have a frequency that is naturally in your genetic encoding, right, that will help you to elevate or to evolve? Yes, you do. But there's a caveat to that. Melanin is a bonding compound. So if you don't handle it properly, it will work against you, right? So that's why we become the most addicted. That's why crack cocaine was so successful in America, and it stayed centralized in Black communities, because melanin is a bonding compound. And if you don't use it right, it'll take in whatever you give it and say, oh, it's a part of the family, let's turn up. But you don't want to turn up with crack. You want to turn up with alkaline food and, you know what I'm saying, alkaline water, right? So we have to be careful now when as we're shaping and molding consciousness moving forward as a people, right? If you're eating Popeye's chicken every day and visiting strip clubs nonstop and super promiscuous and wilding out in your character and in your personality, that's not first frequency. Am I right, sis?
That's right.
Okay, so first frequency has requirements, right? So you have to evolve and be personally, internally focused to get to that state of consciousness and awareness. But you know, the reading the room for women, and you kind of said something, and I don't remember what it was, but I wrote down reading the room as far as how you're carrying yourself. If a woman walks into a church or into a temple in a mini skirt and she's walking and her buttocks is showing and her, right, she walks into that environment, everything, the whole dichotomy of the room will change. Right? If a woman is in a restaurant twerking, and please understand, if I ever see you as a Black woman in a restaurant twerking, there's going to be a problem. Do not ever do that in my presence. It's not going to go well. It's not going to be a physical fight, but I am going to snatch your soul. So please, if you see me in the vicinity, don't ever.
Ladies, did you hear that? She's going to hold you accountable.
It needs to stop immediately, right? But reading the room, you have to be dressed for the occasion, so to speak. When I go to the beach and women are playing volleyball and wearing thongs and nobody's Googling and gagging, you're at the beach. It's appropriate. It's Southern California. You don't wear that outfit into a business meeting. Right? But now we have women online dressing. There's no appropriation. That's not appropriate for social media. Save that for the club, right? So we have Demon Time Strip Club happening online. But guess what? 13-year-olds can see it too. So how do our sons interact in this world where there's constant sexual stimulation, right? But there's also constant stress and pressure because we're going through a pandemic. Plus there's racism, and they're constantly showing us the video of what happened to George Floyd, right? Plus there's, mass lack-based consciousness. We're worried about food. We're worried about water. Will the children be able to go to school? Your baby's in the school and they're forcing them to wear masks. They're, like all of this constant stimulation, negative stimulations for our babies, On
So
top of that are women now that should be guiding them and helping them to understand and overcome and figure it out, are only offering them twerking.
yeah, but they see, when I look at this, when you say, and you run off the list, the way you've run off the list, the distraction, even down to the climate change conversation.
Yeah.
The distractions are, they got them on tap.
Yes.
Yeah. They're just, okay, right, let's turn this one on, let's turn this one off, let's turn this one on, and it's knowing that's, it's being, being in it, yeah, but not of that, yeah, dynamic, that ilk, yeah. We have to operate in these times and navigate the circumstances that we are in, and at the same time we have to remember and center ourselves into who we are as beings. Yeah. It's that when your book really taps into, and I think for women it's going to be if you're ready to do some work on yourself, 2021, this is the book for you. Yeah. Because this, if you're going to take on this book, yeah, get the work done before the end of the year, go into a new year, fire. Yeah, be ready, ladies. Yeah, because I'm going to take on this book. So anyone who wants to take this book on with me, yeah, DM me. Yeah, I'm going in.
Listen, we're not the fun police, right? Anytime we start talking about, being disciplined and people say, oh, I just want to have, we're not talking about not having a good life or enjoying your life, or, you know what I'm saying? But like, step back.
But then again, it's about it's about the residue and the vibration, the residue of our past, but also dealing with like how we resonate right now. Yeah. This is not, it's one of those things. It's not going to be for everyone. Yeah. Because everyone's ready because their distraction is too powerful. Yeah. And you have to recognize that, many are called, few are chosen. Yeah. And so in this conversation is for those who are ready to, take off the veil. Because when I look at this part, and I show you the section, and and I go back to this section because this is where I pause, when it was talking about, how sometimes women compromise themselves, much deeper, and give in. But the section that kind of stood out to me as a second born, daughter, and my elder sister left home, was, and not necessarily forcing, but taking on adult responsibilities. There was a point in time when I was about 15 and my mum was working, single mom, she was working, and I was, studying and literally raising my brother at that point. For, he was 10 and I was raising him for about a year or two. Now, those circumstances, and what showed up for me, there was something really powerful as I got this, in the same week that I received this. That's why I was like, I have to, I got to get you on, right? And the section, and there was a conversation online that I saw, and it was called Healing the Eldest Daughter Syndrome and Being That Surrogate Parent. And so what happens is when you are in a position where you become a surrogate parent, not, maybe by default, not, the circumstances are what they are. Sometimes, the parent can't, is unable to do anything else in that situation. I get it. But what happens to you now as a woman in a, elder sister syndrome, elder daughter syndrome, is that you then are trained to put other people's needs before your own. You're trained to do that, so that when you come into relationships, you talked about the jug. There's a section here about the jug, right? And we'll go there. But it shows you that, you when you start out in relationships, you actually come into your relationships actually empty. You think you're coming in full, because you're first one. You're thinking, you know what, this is me. Yes. But you don't realize that there's an empty cup going on that you entered with. And so then you enter with that, and then you learn to put yourself last from very early on. And so it does take that work. I mean, I hadn't phrased it like that, and I recognize that. And my brother, he talks about me like a second mom. We always talk like that. He's like, he always holds me in high esteem, which is wonderful. but it wasn't a responsibility that I necessarily wanted. I was good at doing it. Yeah. So when I became a doula, it was natural.
Yeah.
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 You know, I could do it. You know, I ended up being, you know, I think I had some kind of towel or some kind of sanitary product. And my brother found it. My younger brother found it when he was 10. Yeah, you know, I was still kind of like navigating. I'd only just started this cycle thing, right? And he must have found it. And then I had to break it down. You know, I had to give him the conversation about, okay, well, this is this, and this is what happens, and you know, and you know, and showed him a little leaflet, you know, this kind of thing. But those kinds of things can, you know, and if it's not handled properly, and I say this and I highlight this because I know there are other women who, you know, they haven't even thought about this too. But, you know, we also have to know the line between that and what they call emotional incest now. Yeah. If you're doing that, you know, you are replacing a parent. Yeah. And that's why when I talk about my sons caring for me, I'm very, very mindful that it doesn't become a thing. Yeah. That they at that time of the month, you know, that's look after mummy time. Or if mom's not feeling well. I mean, even when I'm doing the shows, yeah, they're my stage management. At 6 o'clock, they know, they get everything ready, they set up the table, they do everything for me, yeah. And they love doing it, you know, and they'll make sure I'm on, yeah, they'll check downstairs and make sure I'm on, yeah. And then they go, yeah. And you know, and so it's learning ways. What's happening in our household is we're learning ways. My younger one has got a little YouTube channel going on, yeah, and it's so cute. And so, you know, we're navigating that. So we're giving each other time, like when he's doing his show, and you know, when he's setting up his little show, I'm like, okay, well, you do your little show, and then you know, he doesn't show his face or anything like that. It's all, you know, it's all gameplay type of stuff. But it's when he does his little video, I'm like, okay, you know, we've got to give each other time. You know, so the space we're in our household is how to give each other space.
Yeah.
How to give each other
in the right way. In the right way.
Reading each other, like really reading each other. Like, you know, my tone might say X, my body language might say X. What am I saying? It's almost like a game. Like, did you read me? Did you read that situation? Yeah. Because those are going to be the things that, you know, emotional intelligence is the high, you know, is the new IQ.
Well, and discernment, right? And being able to, you know, read the room, so to speak. So being able to, you know, because there's a negative aspect, or there's a negative variation of giving somebody space. Living in the same house, right? You can say, oh, I'm not dealing with you, and be living together and physically present and be completely emotionally and mentally detached from one another, right? So as sons and as boys, being able to intuitively analyze, watch, observe, and just intuitively know, okay, I need to pivot my energy a little bit. I need to be more involved. I need to be less involved right now, right? Those are feminine characteristics, not female, but feminine attributes and characteristics that if our men and when our men learn to cultivate those things, it will greatly improve not only their relationships with us and the world, but more importantly, the relationships with themselves, right? You talk about pouring from an empty cup. What about men that have never, as mental, spiritual, emotional, and physical beings, right, have never really had any strong spiritual and emotional guidance? And most of the men on this planet are walking around having never really had righteous spiritual and emotional relationships with other women. Not just women they were involved with, their mothers, their grandmothers, their aunties, right? So growing up in this world where there's two parts of you that's never really being stimulated or cultivated, then you get in a relationship with another person, and this woman is going to be very emotionally based because we're women, right? And then if she's not spiritually sound, there's a part of her that's going to be yearning and yearning for that connection, right? And you as her partner, if she doesn't have it, it's your goal or it's your responsibility to be able to help her navigate and cultivate that, as is her with you, right? So we've got all these people in these relationships, going in and out of relationships, and there's no real spiritual substance and countenance. There's no real emotional substance and countenance. I would say mentally and spiritually, we're probably stronger in those areas because we have to think and we have to communicate, even if it's dysfunctional. And everybody's in the gym working on their body, and everybody's talking about vegan and alkaline, right? So the culture is speaking to those things, but the heart center, which is your real strong base. The heart is where it's all really going down, right? But our culture is, stop being emotional. Stop with all that emotional stuff. Oh, you acting like a woman, right? And that connotation of the emotional, intuitive kind of aspect of self that we've been putting on the back burner for so long. Well, guess what? That's the superpower that you're going to need in order to get through this time. Not just the the emotional preparedness, backpack and the making sure you have money saved or gold under your bed or all of those things. Yes, we need to do all of those things, but the spiritual and the emotional emphasis is the superpower and the tools that we're going to need to move us forward in this time frame, right? So I just really and the point you made about the surrogate parent, right? So this is what I was trying to say without saying throughout the whole workbook. A lot of women need to mother themselves.
True.
We're mothering the world, we're mothering our husbands, we're mothering our families, we're mothering our children, but we're not mothering ourselves. So when I do consultations, I've had 75% of the consultations I've had with our sisters, the conversation always starts out, I want to be a healer. I want to be a life coach. I want to go back into the community and help my people. But 20 minutes into the phone conversation, we realize that she's completely abandoning herself. But she wants to go out into the community and serve other people. But you're walking through the community and serving people while vibrating a self, a self-avoidance.
Right? Yeah, but that also comes from, there's I remember saying many years ago, but when, which a lot of women, I think, even if it's not said like this, have taken it on, and embodied this. And the statement was, when you're feeling empty, give. Yeah. And so a lot of women, there's an emptiness, especially when you look back at the churches and how women maybe, let's say they're in the church and their other half is not coming to the church with them. Yeah. And so the women are going off to church and they're giving in the church. And those things peter out over time, whether you're in church or not. But we learn, okay, well, you gotta give. But we keep forgetting ourselves over and over again in the process. And going towards your this section here, because there's quite a lot that goes on when everybody starts to read this. You start to pull this apart even more about the kingdom of the Father is like a certain woman who was carrying a jar full of meal while she was walking on the road, still some distance from home. The handle of the jar broke and the meal emptied out behind her on the road. She did not realize it. She had noticed no instant. When she reached her house, she set the jar down and found it empty. And that really, I loved that you pulled that.
That's a Bible passage.
Because that really allows women to really, it's so small, it's concise.
Yeah.
But women can feel that. You can feel that.
And so when we get to a point where the light goes off and people start talking about self-love, right? And it's like, it sounds good, the concept of self-love, right? But if you've been pouring from a jar that's half empty or quarter empty or whatever empty, and then all the women in your life have been doing the same, you seeing all these women, just get up and go, do what has to be done, neglecting themselves but pouring into everybody else, right? So we have a culture that teaches women to neglect themselves for the sake of the greater good. But how can the greater good be effective if we're building institutions and organizations and schools and banking institutions and agriculture and farms, if we're doing it with women and with people in general that have no self-love or that have never stopped and turned the world off and put themselves first?
I hear that. Listen, family, we're getting to halfway between this thing, and I want to let you join the conversation. If you'd like to join the conversation, here it is in the chat. Yeah, so if you'd like to come into the space, you will have to show your face and be on mic for you to come through. Yeah, so if you're not on screen, I won't be able to bring you through because I won't be able to see you, and that's how the system works. So, but if you want to come in and join the conversation with our sister ZaZaAli, why not come involved? If you've got a question, get involved in the conversation, because we often think that our people abroad are not accessible. Yeah. And it's important for us to recognize that this work is accessible to you, and this conversation is accessible to you too. So here it is in the comments for you. Yeah. And I've just flagged it up for you if you want to come on. So if you've got a question, by all means, from what we've spoken about so far, or any other question that you'd like our sister to answer or help you answer, I'm sure that our sister won't mind. Yeah. I want to move the conversation on a little bit to this, which is takes up quite a section of thinking inside of your book about the oil and the spoon. And for those who don't know the Alchemist's work, tell us a little bit about that.
So The Alchemist is probably my favorite book of all time. Close to it. It is written by Paulo Coelho. It is a global, phenomenon. It's well known in beyond race, time, and culture, right? But the basic premise of the book is about a boy named Santiago who sets out to travel against his parents' wishes to find his treasure and to search for his, to fulfill his dreams, right? And so he goes on this journey, meeting all of these great characters and having all these great experiences in order to do that. But the section about the oil and the spoon is he meets this great king, who I believe was a Moor, based on all of the the specifics about the book. But he meets this great king who tells him, the first thing he tells him is to go and seek, look throughout my kingdom and carry this oil of spoon, right? But go and look at the beauty of the kingdom, but don't spill any oil, right? So he goes and he looks all around the kingdom, but he's so focused on carrying the oil in the spoon that he doesn't really take notice of the beauty of the kingdom. But he comes back and he's like, I have all the oil. And the king's like, no, 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 no. I said, don't spill the oil, but I also said, look at the marvels of the kingdom. So he goes again. This time he's focused on the beauty of everything within the kingdom, the landscaping, et cetera, et cetera. He comes back. He doesn't have any oil in the spoon. The king's like, where's the oil in the spoon? He's like, well, I was so focused on seeing the beauty and the grandeur of the kingdom that I forgot. So the moral of the story is, in your life, see the beauties of the kingdom of the planet, but make sure that you are monitoring the oil in the spoon. And this goes back to what we started out talking about, the balance of indulgence and discipline, right? Being able to turn up when you want to turn up, being able to have fun, being able to explore and experience life at the highest heights, but at the same time, still being disciplined, still being internally focused, and being balanced. That's what the moral of that story was. And I think it's a great lesson for people to kind of really apply to their personal lives.
Excellent. Thank you for that. And I think, I think that, again, it keeps going back to balance at all times. It just continues to take us there. Hold on, give me a second. Let me just check this. Okay, we've got a problem with the page. Hold on. Right. I want to check. I want to go up a little bit to a section here. Yeah. You talk about it takes a village. Yeah. Yes. And I think we've talked about that some already. Yeah. Mm-hmm. But there's a section here. Give me a second. And this is great. If you don't know, obviously this is the first time you're coming across this conversation for Keys to Womanhood by ZaZaAli. But she has these little sections here where you can see thought processes, space, for notes and monitoring daily thoughts, So that shows up throughout the book at different points. So it gives you an opportunity to reflect, Yeah. I wanted to check this out. I thought this was really powerful, If a woman is sending out strong masculine energy, she will attract feminine partners. If a man is sending out strong feminine energy, he will attract masculine partners. To attract your ideal partner, you have to be amplifying your natural core energy. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I thought that was, really powerful for, us as women. There's that whole conversation about, bad guys and this kind of, and I think we talked about it the last time, that whole kind of, why do we women go for bad guys and all this kind of things. A lot of it has to do, and this is about dispelling that myth, because women want to be protected. It's their kind of natural instinct. That's what I know. Yeah. And so, when women are going, it's not that they want bad guys, to the brothers, it's not that women want bad guys, it's not that, they want to be protected. And unfortunately, some of these so-called bad guys come with a character and behavior that can protect. They may not be able to do other things, they may not provide this or do this, or they're not this or they're not that, but at the same time, that's what women are seeking when they go down that road. Yes, that's the main reason for it. So let's just deal with it.
And please let me say this.
Go for it.
Everything in our culture promotes the bad guy.
True.
Everything in our culture promotes the bad guy. How are pimps cool in the Black culture? Please help me understand. How are pimps notable, right, and respected characters in the Black community? Please tell me. Right? So Scarface is a living legend in the Black culture. Is he not?
This is true, but look, I'm going to challenge that. I remember doing some personal development, the Millionaire Mind. In fact. And one of the things that came up on that many years ago, and it stuck with me, there's the kind of, there's the bad guy and this kind of energy and this kind of alpha energy, but there's also what what was phrased as part of one of the talks there was the enlightened wimp. I'll go there today.
Oh, I know some enlightened wimps. Oh my God.
There's a lot of that about. Oh, there's a lot of that about. Let's be honest, sis. Come on, let's be honest. You're enlightened. You're not able to change a light bulb or put up a shelf. Tell the truth.
Yes.
If we go, are we going to go hungry in your care? We want to know.
Because we're not. We will learn how to fix the light ourselves.
But that's the thing. What happens is when our brothers are not doing this kind of work, they may be enlightened, but they're not able to protect. They haven't cultivated that masculine, that protective energy. They haven't cultivated it. So they give them a book. They will rinse it off. Fantastic, wonderful. Where's the practicality? No, let's just be real.
No, I am 100% in agreement with you.
I'm a practical woman. I do practical work. I see babies, I see miracles. I help with those. I'm a practical woman.
No, we are in alignment, sis. I assure you, even if I'm laughing. But I want to say this, right? Because there's the protection thing, right? This is the bottom line. We are mental, spiritual, emotional, and physical beings, right? A lot of women are seeking mental, emotional, and spiritual stimulation in a culture and in a world that has not cultivated men that meet that standard, right? So in lieu of that, now we work with what we have. Women are attracted to power and they're attracted to respect. It's a natural inclination, right? So if in your environment, the only people that are showing some semblance of power or some semblance of respect is the local dope boy, right? Or the bad guy, right? Mm-hmm. Even if it's perverted, even if it doesn't make sense, there is an organic, natural element to why she's attracted to that type of man, right? If there's nobody else in the culture that's making any waves, if there's nobody else in the culture that is an example, even if it's a grimy example, right? Block boy is pulling up in a Benz and handing out money to, the babies on the corner. Yeah, it might be dope money, but is the computer nerd doing that? Is you know what I'm saying? The right? So there's all these there's layers to this.
But I want to ask you a question. I got a question for you then inside of this. If we know that there are these, the alpha or the bad guy, the bad guy has been given a particular notoriety. Yeah. But then the other types, or the beta male, then hasn't been given that notoriety. Yeah.
He shouldn't get notoriety. Beta males don't get notoriety.
They don't.
That's not.
They don't. That's true. That's right. They don't get. They get. Okay, so they don't get their notoriety. They get their. They're not necessarily in the same. They don't operate from the same sphere. Yeah. Yeah, for them. Yeah. Mm-hmm. How do you see? Yeah, like let's say a woman is doing all this work, because remember, women are doing this work on themselves all the time out here. Yeah, a lot of sisters doing a lot of work. Yeah, I'm not saying all of us. Yeah, but the sisters around me, they're doing the work. Yes. Yeah. So there are sisters doing this elevation, and evolving. Yeah. And then we look at, okay, you might not want the bad guy. Okay, cool. And you might not even want a beta male either, particularly. Yeah. You want someone who's strong enough to handle communication, hasn't got a fragile ego, isn't flaky. You want that. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So what do you think? Like, let's say a young lady has read this book. She's like, she's 21. Yeah. And she's at that stage now. She's like, right, I've done this work. Or she's even saved herself. Yeah. Intimately. She saved herself. She's gone through this book now. What is it that our young brothers need to do to learn how to protect their Black women?
So, let me say this. Sisters that are doing the work and that are internally focused and that are cultivating themselves with the righteous perspective shouldn't be attracting beta males. You hear what I said, sis? So if you're still attracting beta males, right? That means that the signal is not strong enough, right? So a lot of times when we have these conversations, right, we'll name off 20 reasons why women should feel insecure in relationships, and then say, now we need you to feel insecure in relationships so you can attract a better quality of men, right? So we talk beta males, we talk bad guys, LGBTQ men are automatically off the list. We've got a list of 20 reasons why women shouldn't feel secure about attracting an equally yoked man. 20, it could be 100, depending on who you're talking to, right? So we constantly bombard women with lack-based consciousness around men, and then we wonder why we keep attracting the same type of men, right? So that's the first thing before we even get into what men need to do, because a lot of women are projecting weakness and negativity on men, right? So you meet a man. I hear so many dating horror stories now, right? People are meeting people on social media now. So you didn't even make the initial physical attraction, the juice, the chemistry starts flowing before you guys. There's no physical, interaction. There's no energetic transference. So you're meeting a random stranger online. All you see is pictures, right? You have no essence, no idea of the essence of this person's being, right? So the dichotomy of how men and women are meeting and interacting is different now, right? So there's that. I don't think women need to be, or men, your question, you said, how can men learn how to protect Black women? By learning how to protect themselves, by standing up for themselves. There's a lot of men that are very reckless in how they carry themselves. They bed women, they have jump offs. You know what I'm saying? They don't take care of their bodies. They're not thinking about the way that they're thinking. They're emotionally out in the world, just completely neglecting themselves, right? So if you want to learn how to properly cover down on women, if that's even a question or a thought process, learn how to properly cover down on yourself, right? First and foremost. And then you have nieces, you have aunties, you have a mother, you have a grandmother, right? You have women in your community, you have neighbors, right? So instead of trying to go out and be the hero for all women, just start with the women around you. And most women don't need it. For most women, it's less about physical protection and it's more about emotional and mental protection. right? So you don't even we think that you got to come up, there's this notion you got to be Superman and be a tough guy and be able to, if the guy bumps into your lady while you guys are on a date, to be physically aggressive. And I mean, that happens sometimes, but for the most part, most women are looking for emotional and mental and spiritual protection from men, which most of our men have not learned how to cultivate. So the more you're internally focused, right, and taking care of yourself, that's naturally going to emit to the relationships around you. And if you just want to, be the guy that can lay down a jacket so a woman can walk over a puddle, or be able to push a tough guy off your woman, and take Muay Thai classes. You know what I'm saying? Learn capoeira, learn how to box. If it's just about the physical part of being able to take care of and protect a woman. But most women are not looking for that type of protection, even though we need it.
Well, I say that too, because even, and I asked the question kind of loosely, because in my field, one of the things that I say to men, when I'm working with families, is that his role, and part of his role and responsibility to her while she's pregnant, is to protect her mind.
Yes.
You protecting her mind, those are what goes here happens down here.
Yes.
When it comes to birth. So if she's okay emotionally, then there's a strong chance emotionally that your child is going to start in a high frequency state.
Yes.
When our women are experiencing trauma because of the pregnancies, and we know now that things like domestic abuse and domestic violence happen in the first year of a mother and father's new baby, or often in pregnancy. It's, statistics are that they're more prevalent during that point. And again, I always look at that, often I know, obviously in my field, I recognize men do struggle at times, the reality of becoming responsible. Like you were talking about your son. I remember with mine, it was like, taking responsibility for someone outside of yourself, like someone depends on you. That's when I felt like I became a woman. And when I look at the dynamics between a mother and a father, how he influences her makes an emotional difference, emotional, and spiritual, and in terms of physiological difference to that child's well-being. And so protecting the mind. So when you talk about that,
how a man raises his voice in a household, right? How you speak to your wife or how you speak to your girlfriend, and whether the child is present in the room and actually watching it, or is in the other room and just can hear the vibration and the energy from the conversation, right? But that's protection. That's not wielding a gun and going and opening the door if a bad guy comes, right? That's not, in the middle of the night making sure the alarm system is on and all the windows are locked. But that's what we focus on when we talk about protection. That's where our mind automatically goes. So you said a man's job during a woman's pregnancy is to protect her mind. Where's the class with men teaching that lesson?
Well,
I've never even heard a man, and I'm not saying that this is not the case, but to be able to express something so simple but so important, right? From the perspective of this is security, this is protection, right? How can you emotionally cover down on an emotional woman during an emotional time, pregnancy, right? And she's doing everything other than what you want her to do, and nothing in the household is clicking and operating right, and the children are being neglected because she's tired, or all those little innuendos that happen when a woman is going through childbirth, right? Can a man stand in her place and run a household while she is trying to nurture, right, herself? Because that's your responsibility. That's protection. When you get sick, when you aren't able to take care of yourself, your partner is supposed to come in and fill in those gaps, right? So I think while we talk about, protect, and I want to say something, because we mentioned beta male, and I said beta male shouldn't get any attention, right? Because I know I have people be sensitive, right? So
I know.
that we have a lot of beta males. They need love too. Well, let's give the beta males love, right? We're saying this. I said in the last video that weak men trigger me, and they do, right? So this is the important. This is important for this conversation. It doesn't mean that men that may be weak in certain regards or have issues, or if you as a man identify as a beta male, then we know where we need to start, right? But I don't want it. I feel women have a big role and responsibility for what we've created in our culture. This is not just on men for me. You know what I'm saying? So I'm not sitting back like, yeah, beta males create beta males. No, weak women create beta males. You understand what I'm saying? Because I know, and I could stand on the top of a mountaintop and tell you what I know my son will or will not do as it pertains to certain things. Is he young? Is he going to be stupid and make mistakes? Of course. But there are certain things that I know unequivocally for a fact that my son is not going to do because I don't raise beta males. You understand what I'm saying? A lot of this goes back into the pregnancy, the way the woman eats when she's carrying the child, what she's watching, right? So I just feel like women, we gotta weak women create weak men.
But then isn't it just it's cyclical? I mean, when we talk about that circumstance, a woman, as we come into relationships as young women, yes, we are coming in it with our cups empty already.
Yes, but we are here.
That's the weakening begins.
But me and Sister Moo, right now on October 21st, 2021, are having a conversation and speaking to the world, and you're thousands of miles away from me in Los Angeles, California. We're having this conversation because we're going to change the dichotomy. Weak men will not be able to survive this paradigm shift. Weak women will not be able to survive this paradigm shift. So it's not a question of whether you want to listen to what we have to say or whether you want to make a change. You're either going to change or you're not going to make it. That's the reality of the world that we're living in right now. And mind you, we're only talking about the layers of issues in the Black community and in the African diaspora. We're not even talking about the real war, the elephant in the room that none of us are really, we can't really talk about online. But yeah, there are some things that are around the corner. And if you're not mentally and spiritually and emotionally standing on your square, it's going to be a difficult time.
Truth.
So it's some of the work that we're doing. It's the workbook. It's the work we do with women and young women. But God is on the scene. The earth is not playing with human beings right now. So that first frequency, that the guy that you talked about, you're either going to be first frequency or you're not going to make it. Hell will increase. Hell will increase for you if you don't take this moment in time serious. Hell will increase for you if you don't get your mind and your emotions and your spiritual acumen together. It's not a choice anymore. We had time to make choices. We had 400 years of experience from Africans that came to this country and gave us a long line of information on what to do and what not to do. Did we pay attention? No, we didn't. We've been studying Europeans for a long time in their history, and we're still talking about the issues that Europeans are bringing onto our people because we still haven't taken internal accountability and self-responsibility. So this is a great and dreadful day. Great if you're first frequency. Great if you have knowledge of self. Great if you're spiritually focused. Dreadful if you're not.
Tell us this. I'm staying silent here because I'm going right to this section here, which I think is really powerful. Yeah. And I want you to, and it is in line with what you're saying in terms of it's like what feeds you.
Yes.
Yeah. What's that? At the source of who you are.
Yes.
Yeah. Who are you when no one's looking?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. What's your integrity really like? Yeah. So these are these kind of unanswered questions that, our parents don't necessarily have these kinds of conversations with us. Society, your education system won't have these kinds of conversations with you. Yeah.
Yeah.
And academics, the academia world won't teach you these things. Yeah. But here we are with these huge questions and these huge conversations for accountability, especially during these times. Yeah.
Yes.
So I just want to go go here to this space here when you talk about what is your master teacher. Almost
So,
all of our programming, both positive and negative, was accepted by us by the time we were 3 years old. Our experiences since then are based upon what we accepted and believed about ourselves and about life at that time. The way we were treated when we were very little is usually the way that we treat ourselves now. The person you are scolding is a 3-year-old child within you.
mm,
What was done in the past is done, and it is over now. But this is the present time, and you now have the opportunity to treat yourself the way you wish to be treated. A
yes.
frightened child needs comforting, not scolding.
Yes.
And because when you go back into like a lot of us want to move on, and from we don't want to look at our childhood trauma. We
Yeah.
don't want to look at what made us into, what the bricks, building blocks were that made us who we were. Yeah.
Mm,
We want to start from, a lot of us, yeah, it's wonderful to use, the law of attraction. I think these things are very powerful at the right points.
at the
But when
right.
you start with a blank canvas,
Yes.
and then you're like, yeah, I'm going to build on that. And I'm coming from, the law of attraction. The other stuff underneath seeps through.
Yes. And the
Yeah.
other stuff, underneath is what actually is your vibration, which is what you're going to attract, right? So while we talk law of attraction, and we can talk about creating vision boards and getting the car you want, or getting the house, or the bag, or so to speak, that's only the surface level stuff, right? So it's a couple of things that you said, right? The most of the work that I do with my clients, with my personal clients, is about changing the narrative and the story that they've been telling themselves, and the story that has been turned over and over and over, right? So for instance, your personal experience, you talked about that second parent element of having to be a young girl, young lady, and actually parenting a sibling, right? And how that, has nurtured you into the space you're in right now. Well, that dichotomy of that relationship and that space that you were forced to put in is why you're such a good mother. It's why you have the emotional and mental acumen to teach your sons about the cycle and the complexities of women, right? And the compassionate element and that feminine energy that you want to cultivate in your sons, so they're balanced and not walking out into the world looking for love from everybody because they never found a way to love themselves, right? You have that wherewithal and that foresight from that experience as a child. Now, a lot of people get stuck in the experience. So women or girls that have been the second parent that never got a chance to experience their childhood, right?
Arrested development. Yep.
So now she's 25 or 30, still living like a young girl because she never ever got a chance, right? So some people get stuck there. So for some people, it's a platform to launch off into the stratosphere and to be great and to be wonderful. And then for other people, it's the hindrance of why they started to get on drugs and why they can never get their life straight, right? I have a nephew whose father abandoned him, who never really was a strong presence in his life. So he had children and had 3 different children by 3 different women, and all of those relationships are dysfunctional. So he's trying to figure it out with never having had a strong male,
Presence.
presence, thank you, to look at and to model after, right? So he can get stuck in, my father was never there, so I'm going to subconsciously do to my children what they did to me. Or he can be, I didn't have it, so I'm going to make sure I go full throttle and do everything I can to make sure that my children are loved and valued and needed and appreciated, right? What is your master teacher? For me, I didn't grow up with my mother. So not having a mother in my life and being a biracial child, growing up in very strong, prominent Black Africa, Oakland, a very revolutionary and liberal Black city, right? Growing up in that environment, being mixed, but also not having a mother figure was very important to who I've become today. Now, I could have got stuck on the fact that my mother didn't raise me. I could have got stuck and became promiscuous and in the streets and off the hook and indirectly hating other women or hating, women that could have helped me because of my relationship with my mother. I didn't get stuck there, but a lot of women do. You see what I'm saying? But I own my story now. There's no, oh, if it could have been this or it could have been that. No, millions of people around the world have heard my voice and know who I am and have either benefited or whatever because of that situation. I didn't have a mother, so I became a mother for the world. You see what I'm saying? And I don't say that, like, I'm still young and vibrant. Don't start writing me, calling me auntie and mama.
Don't worry, girl.
You know what I'm saying? I'm still in the
game.
Flavor,
baby. You still got flavor. Don't worry.
Still in the game, right? But I'm just saying, like owning that.
That's right. But it comes back down to channeling that experience.
Yeah, and
changing you become present with inside yourself and who, you know, what you're capable of, and really kind of dissecting yourself and looking at your strengths, your weaknesses, you know, the opportunities, like a what they call a SWOT analysis, you know, the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats,
absolutely.
So who we are.
So, but there's a macrocosm to that too, because that's the microcosm, the individual. You know, look at Africans and what we've been through. Right? For 100-year sojourn, right? For a long time, I couldn't get past slavery. I was like, okay, God, you had me we were good with the pyramids. We were good with the oceans and the mountains and the moon and the sun, but I couldn't get past how you would allow for people to go, any people, let alone my people, go through what you've allowed to take place. Like I got stuck on that. But once I started to step back and look at it from taking time out of the equation, one, but then also looking at what we've been cultivated to become as a people around the world, right? But just in America in particular, because this has been my focus and my vantage point, right? There are people all over the world, whether directly or indirectly, consciously or subconsciously, waiting for Black people in America to stand up. All over the world, right? So are we failing them? Absolutely. Like, let's be clear. But the energetic resonance of what we've created as a people in this environment, right? Our athletes, our entertainers, our poets, right? The strong ones among us have kind of come out of that soup of suffering and struggling, right? So it's just a matter of us stepping back and being like, yeah, God has been perfecting itself through our journey. And that's what's actually been happening. And we're still growing. We're still evolving. Things are still taking place. But I just, you know, for us as a people, I think we need to step back from the narrative of suffering and stand in the power of what we've overcome. You know what I'm saying? It's very important, especially in this hour. We have the tools now. We know what it feels like to go through a dark night of the soul for 400 years and come out on the other end. You know what I'm saying? So we could say, well, 400 years we've been suffering and there's still been no change. Or we can say, yeah, 400 years, we got experience. We know what to do to come out on the other side of this, right? So changing the narrative. I'm not a victim of racism, white supremacy. I don't even believe in white supremacy. You know what I'm saying? And anytime I use that language now, I'll give it a footnote, you know, racism, you know, so-called white supremacy. I don't believe in supremacy.
Yeah, I hear that. I've had this debate. I have had this debate with a lot of brothers, and I'm telling you, it's a fiery conversation because, you know, when we keep talking about, I'm very attuned to that, especially where I have children. Mm-hmm. If I start using words, you'll never hear me use the word white supremacy. Like, I don't use that phrase, right?
Yes.
Because if I'm saying it,
yes,
I'm basically allowing it to live and breathe.
Yes.
If I think from that, then what hope or chance do my sons have if I come to them and say, well, don't get me wrong, they know that there's racism and, you know, it can't be ignored. But to start going into the space where we talk about white supremacy with them, not in my household. Yeah.
Well, and that's
because I'm not going to let you, I'm not going to let you as my son in these times. Yeah, where I know things going on in America, and it's only just in the last last 5-10 years that our boys are killing each other like this. Yeah, at a prolific rate. Yeah. You know, youth. You know, it's the Hunger Games out here for a lot of these young people. Yeah,
it is. And you know, but what you said in your perspective is that intuition that women have, that, again, going back to sitting at the table when bombs get dropped and when decisions about war get made, right? That type of mentality and that foresight to be able to see the full picture opposed to just reacting is where we have to get back into the balance in order to kind of recenter our planet, so to speak. But your belief in anything is what gives it power.
Absolutely. And if you keep saying that kind of stuff to young people, as adults, we have to be responsible.
Yes.
Loose lips sink ships. Yeah.
Absolutely.
And when we start saying things like, okay, white supremacy, and our children are earshot of those kinds of things, well, then what, although I was raised to be aware of racism, no one ever used that language to me.
Yeah.
In my consciousness as a child. Yeah. So if we start raising our children with that drop.
It's a seed that gets planted and watered.
That's right. Where do you take them? What aspirations do you give them when you've planted that seed that someone is superior to you?
Yes.
Yeah. When in fact we know that we are superior.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, here's the thing. So everything in the society reiterates the seed. Everything waters the seed. So at home, you're just trying to protect your son and make him aware of police brutality, or make him aware of, the subtleties that, you have to deal with when you deal with white people. So at home, you're looking out for their best interest, but the world is reiterating the supremacy, because when they go in the banks and apply for a loan, right? Or when they go to, so many banks I don't even know which banks are still, Bank of America or Chase or one of the prominent, all of the things that are in this society, the things that we care about are all kind of in the system of white supremacy, quote unquote, right? So, but this is the thing. You see the videos, right, where you'll see a parent talking to his son, and he's talking to him about how to react when a police pulls you over, right? And I've seen 1,000 of these videos, right? Where it's like, put your hands on the steering wheel, right? Don't move too suddenly, be careful about how you talk, yes, sir, yes, ma'am, like, right? If you're not having this conversation from a position of power, and if that conversation is done because that father went through a similar experience and he never wants his son to experience that, and as he's teaching his son, he's also still feeling the fear that he felt when he went through that experience, guess what? You are exponentially increasing the possibility that your son is going to interact with a racist police officer and have that type of experience. Now, let's be clear. A lot of our sons never have those type of interactions with police. All Black boys do not have those type of interactions with police. There's Black boys and young Black men that grow up in the worst hoods, the worst communities and environments, and never actually have those type of experiences. What's the difference? Some people will say, well, right place, right time, wrong place, wrong time. I beg to differ. I say it's energetic resonance. If you're walking through the hood or in an urban environment fearing the police, you exponentially increase your chance of experiencing that. So when my son and I had that conversation, it was, if that ever happens to you, go within your mind, take a couple of deep breaths, own what you want to come out of the experience, and then don't think anything else except what you want. And the only thing you want to come out of the experience is have a nice day, be well, right? However that ends up with the police officer, what the bottom line is, you want this gentleman to engage you, get whatever he needs, and then keep it pushing, right?
But that goes back to what you say. When you say those things, I hear, that saying, what we think about, we bring about.
Yes.
So it's like you've got to come to that situation with a certain intention. Mm-hmm. Yeah. You can't come there with your heat and your emotion. You got to come there with your wisdom and your groundedness in a situation like this. 100%. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I know the situations. There's times when I've been in situations. I was having this conversation with a brother previously, and I had to deal with a situation, funny enough, today where a sister needed some support, and a brother was in the space and wouldn't leave the space, and I had to almost talk him down, if you like, to remove himself from the space for both their safety, mm-hmm. And but we look at these situations, and we have to navigate that, our mindsets in these situations. It's that fight, flight, freeze response, mm-hmm. that we have to look at obviously, but knowing that we are grounding ourselves in, like you're saying, what you're talking about to your son, like coming there with an intention. What
Yeah.
is it? It's going to be, have a nice day, officer, going about your business.
And projecting internal power.
That's right.
Projecting internal power.
Holding your power. Absolutely.
There was a remember when the big Sandy Hook shooting happened, and at the school out here, and all those babies, allegedly, there was, you remember the Sandy Hook thing, right? Where there was a mass shooting at an elementary school.
What area was that?
Oh, this had to be like maybe 8 years ago. It was one of the big ones, though.
In the States. Okay, yeah.
It was a mass shooting that happened at an elementary school, and children did get shot, right? So it was like a really, really big thing. And my son was in elementary school at the time. And when we had the only conversation we had about it was, I need you to know and understand that if anything negative or even closely similar to this happens at your school, you are divinely provided and protected for, and that wherever you are, not a hair on your head will be scratched. And I didn't go into the logistics, because sometimes as women, one of the things we like to dig in with boys and with men. We want them to see the full, we want to make sure you do this, no, very simple, very basic. Please understand, son, if there's any casualties or anything ever happens to yours at your school or please know and understand and take the thought very powerfully in your mind that not one hand or head on your head will ever be harmed. And that was it. And my son has never from that day forward came and, had, Mom, I'm scared, or we never had those type of conversations. Power. See, this is the problem with not understanding the spiritual realm, because the spiritual realm is the larger part of who you are, right? So how you're thinking and how you're feeling is what determines the type of power and the energetic resonance that you project.
I would agree. I mean, my eldest son, he is now at 21. He's never had been stopped by police and then kinds of situations. Yeah. And he does know how to carry himself. I've always raised my children in a way where if everyone's doing A, you're doing B.
Yes.
Yeah. So, if you're wearing X, if they're wearing X, you're not wearing X.
Yes.
Yeah. So as long as you know yourself and you can find your fashion and it make them, when it comes to fashion, I make them, look at their own wardrobe, look at what they had, look at these kinds of things, like not always following what's on trend.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because I know young people get caught up on what's on trend. Don't get me wrong. I think it's important to add elements of what's in trend, like where my young middle one right now is having, doing his little YouTube thing. Cool. Yeah. I know, right? It's so cute. And that's cool. Do your thing, yeah, within reason, boundaries, timing. What is it? When he puts out these little videos, just for you guys, he comes to me, like, I'm his editor, so he comes to me and he shows me them, and I'm like, right, well, is it copy? Is this copyright? Is this this? Is this that? Have you have you looked at that? Is that appropriate? I know it's a meme that people say, but is it appropriate? Think about the giving him all the dimensions, even if it's like a 2-minute video, yeah, just so that he comes to it. Now when he's been doing it for maybe about a month or so now, and so now when he comes to it, yeah, he's like, okay, there's so much less to edit, because now he's becoming aware. Okay, well, that might be appropriate, that might not be appropriate, somebody might, this might be taken in that way. Yeah. I might not know the history of that. Like there's it might be an accent, but the accent is designed to mock a particular race. Yeah. No, he's now working out, okay, well, I can't use that. Even if it's considered funny, there is, there's an element of offense. Yeah. So he's having to work out these things and navigate these things. He's 11. He's having to work out and navigate these things. But the navigation, we're cultivating. We have to be aware while we're doing this work, women, yeah, and men, yeah, because we're getting onto a section here. We have to remember that our children are watching. Yeah. We have to remember that it's in our interest that we not just you see it every now and again. I see it where you can see the parents are doing a lot of work and the children aren't getting that kind of nutrition. Yeah. Mental nutrition. Yeah. And so you're seeing particular residues, and people are hoping that nobody notices, but it's there. Yeah. And cultivating these things, integrity in our children, responsibility, accountability, awareness, um, reading one's body language. Yeah. The art of that. At the moment, with my 11-year-old, he's getting to that point. So he's getting to that point where, he wants to kind of like check the boundaries, check my temperature a little. And so I'm like, okay, so I'm asking him to, we have conversations about addressing the tone, in what you're saying, or what you're saying is perfectly fine. It's the delivery. Yeah. So these kinds of conversations, I'm very, and I say it to them, I say, I'm not telling you for you, right? I'm telling you this now for my grandchildren, that, right? Because we have to, again, like you're saying, have that foresight enough to see where we're at. And when we going forward, as we go into this section here and we wrap up soon, it talks about the awakened masculine and the wounded masculine. I want you to kind of like go into that for us. Yeah. Especially, it's not just about men. We have to understand that our sons are experiencing these wounds too. Society is giving them wounds, whether we want them or not. Yeah. They're being exposed to, the George Floyd situation. They can't not see these things. So they're picking up wounds, even if they're not their own. Yeah. They're picking up other people's wounds into their spirit. Yeah. As they journey through this thing. Yeah. So, and then it leaves them in a place, we talked about the betas and the alphas, and also, often I would say, only thing I'd say about that is when a child doesn't have fathers, it makes them more susceptible, or if their fathers are not, they may be physically there, but not present, emotionally present. These are the things that cultivate the beta. Yeah. I would say, in I suppose looking at that and assessing that more, because a lot of men don't, it's not a choice. If you're beta, it's not necessarily a choice. It's cultivated, and not every you're laughing. What are you laughing? It's that word, isn't it? I know. It's an agitation. I know. That, but it's about, I want to see, I want to see from when I think about your book, I think, okay, where's the men's version?
Oh, I'm gonna write it.
I know you are.
I am gonna write it, and I'm going to be consulting with men that I have a high level of respect for my checks and balances, right? So I'm not just gonna put out like I respect, the men in my cipher, and the men that I love too much to just put something out half cocked, right? And not make sure that it's in alignment with men's own personal goals and aspirations, right? Because I'm a woman with a son, so that's important. But at the same time, and like I was saying before in how I talk to my son, whereas women, where we want to kind of stuff it down your throat and make sure you get it and make sure you understand everything, it's men they speak a different type of language. They operate in the world differently from us. Women have to stop trying to get men to operate the way we do. Right. And I've learned that's been a very valuable lesson for me with my son. Right. But let me say something. I want to make sure I say something before I answer this directly. When we were talking about the police situation and men that interact with police, sometimes it's because you're operating from a fear-based consciousness. So you attract, an experience that kind of embellishes the fear, right? But we also have to remember that we all come into this reality with kind of divine soul purposes, right? So sometimes you're going to have a traumatic experience, whether it's with an abusive police officer or even rape, right? We have these traumatic experiences that kind of cultivate the environment for our soul's journey, right? So don't be thinking that, if you had a random encounter with a police officer, it was automatically because you're operating from a fear frequency. Because what'll happen is a man will be like, well, no, I wasn't feeling any fear. That's not true. That's not what I was going through. And it could be true. It could be that you had this experience to cultivate the climate to become a lawyer or to become a police officer or to become a service to the community, right? So I just want to make sure I say that because it's never just black and white. There's always layers and caveats. But as far as, the beta male versus the alpha male, we need to just cultivate an environment where men can be men again. I don't believe all men are supposed to be one way. All men aren't supposed to be out with militias and, strapped up and ready to lock and load, because we have intellectuals and we have scientific minds and we have spiritual men that meditate and do yoga and Tai Chi, right? So we got to stop trying to get everybody to be one thing. We've never been a monolithic people, ever. Africans never always did any one thing in particular the same type of way. So we've got to stop trying to impose that now. But then you add the toxic masculinity, and what I've been saying and what I know to be true is that most of the men that are inflicting pain amongst themselves and on women are in a lot of pain. You know what I'm saying? So that compassion and that empathy element, because there's a war on men being garnered by men. There's a war on men by men. Now, if women aren't conscientious of that, and we're just stepping back and talking about what you did to me, that doesn't represent the divine feminine consciousness, because a queen is operating for the whole spectrum. That's a concubine versus a queen versus a goddess, right? And I'm going to get into the concubine. I'll get into that in my videos. But a queen is thinking about the entire kingdom. So she's moving and making decisions and choices based on being a ruler of a collective, so to speak. A goddess is a ruler of self, right? So that's the difference between those two things. But we don't have enough women stepping back and analyzing and assessing where the world is right now, which is what I do. I'm looking back and assessing where the world is right now and what needs to be done to bring this back into balance, right? One of the things that needs to be done is men need to come back to their emotional and spiritual center. That has to be a top priority. Our men right now are emphasizing money. Our men right now are emphasizing economics and certain physical aspects, being mentally strong. There needs to be a strong, valiant push by women and men to cultivate an environment where men can be mentally and spiritually strong and aware, right? So I think this, and I'm careful with how I talk, first and foremost because of my son, but because I have empathy and compassion for what our men have been through and what they're going through, right? Nobody wants to live without a father. Nobody wants to come into this world handicapped, right? And now you're 15, 16, 17, 18, 25, 45, right? Trying to figure out how to be a man when nobody's ever really shown you how to be a man. Nobody wants that experience. We as women have to have empathy and compassion for that. That means, now the problem is you don't sleep with that type of man. You don't make him your, your life partner when you know he has those type of issues. You don't necessarily have to shun him. A lot of those relationships are supposed to be brother-sister connections, where we come together and you pour in some masculine and I pour in some feminine, and you help me heal my trauma and I help you heal your trauma, and then we can be whole human beings. But the minute you sleep together, now the toxicity is just magnifying, right? Because now sex is the focus instead of us being, whole beings and coming together and creating something. So, the war on men, for me as a woman, I take that very serious and personally. I understand self-sabotage. I understand that a man that's going to the club every night and throwing back drinks and taking 2 or 3 women home, and you know what I'm saying, all the stuff that we promote in our culture, a man that doesn't really love himself is doing those type of things. He's giving his body and emitting sperm left and right and laying with women that don't really have any value and are, second frequency, right? Second tier frequency type beings. Our men are laying down with those type of women and then producing mediocre children and then standing back saying, where did I go wrong? Right? You need to be sexually disciplined and stop taking on multiple partners and stop and kind of taking a self-analysis, right? So I think that's kind of, where we can start with it as far as how women are, approaching this war against women and, the rage against the divine feminine too.
Yeah, I mean, I think there, I don't know if you heard at the beginning of the show, but where, this month is, domestic abuse, domestic violence awareness, month here in the UK.
Mhm.
And that rage is real for a lot of women.
Oh, yeah.
It's very, very real. And it has to, of course, it has to be addressed. And I probably would like to ask you how your book helps women to address that and heal that within inside of themselves, because it's a very serious subject. I think, a lot of women have had either had domestic abuse or domestic violence, some situation, or some kind of sexual violation. I know we had a show called, Hidden Harms. A few months ago, and so if anyone hasn't seen that show, check it out. It's an important show. We will at some point do a part 2, but I do think there is this, again, going back to this masculine and feminine. I did notice earlier, you had David Dider's a quote from David Dider's Way of Superior Man. Excellent book. Excellent book. All men should read that book. I bought that for my son when he was 17 for his 17th birthday. Yeah, that's a must read for men.
Yes.
But
and it doesn't matter that he says things in there that make women feel some type of way. That's where we have to, because I've heard you promote that. Don't you know that he says such as this? Like, listen, the book's not for us, first of all. Secondly, there are things in that book that men need to know that we can't teach them. Right?
It's true.
So please, I just wanted to say that.
Yeah, I think it's important. Like, knowledge is, I'm a woman. I love our people and I love our books, but I will read what is truth is truth. Yeah. And I'm going to read something that makes sense. And that book is one of the most important books for men to understand the masculine and feminine energy in a way that's practical.
Yes.
Yeah. That the importance of a man, not being, I suppose, taken off purpose, if you like.
Yes.
And no woman really wants a man who doesn't have purpose and doesn't know how to put purpose, as make a purpose a priority. Again, those kinds of things create protection. As long as obviously his purpose benefits others. Disclaimer. Yes. Yeah.
And you know what really came to me out of that book, and looking at it objectively and as a woman, but also how the value of it for men. Now flip that over and think about women and how we operate in the world based on our purpose. Right? Do we ever say no man wants a woman that doesn't know her purpose in life? It's a whole different psychological, right? So, and I've had conversations with men that this is like, I just need my woman to support me, right? I make the money, I'm the bread maker, so I just need a woman. But it's like, so if she has a purpose for her life and it's not in alignment with your personal goals and aspirations, how does that work, right? But just the idea that there's a whole book and a whole ideology, and rightfully so, about men being loyal to their purpose so that their women respect them in the process, which is a big part of David Dida's teaching, right? What if we as women, and there's a section in Becoming a Queen, that quote about what's his name, Genghis Khan, and how he was telling his daughters about reputation, right? And about being loyal to your reputation first, and through your loyalty to your reputation, you develop a loyalty to your nation, right? And then from the loyalty to your nation, you develop a loyalty to your people. And then from your loyalty to your people, you can automatically have a loyalty towards your husband, because what type of man wouldn't respect a woman like that? That's a totally different way of, I'm going to be internally focused. I'm going to build myself up. I'm going to go after my goals and aspirations. I'm going to be a good person. I'm going to be of service. And once I do all of those things, how could I not attract a man that is my complement? How could I not attract a man that's equally yoked? Now we're out here, let me get a man. Let me find a man. As soon as I find a man, then everything's going to fall into place. But then you find a man who is either solid in his own personal convictions, but wants you to neglect yours because that's his primary focus, or he's all over the place and he doesn't even know who he is. And because you don't either, you guys come together and create chaos and maybe even have a child in the process, right? So let me see, the rage against the divine feminine, right? So think about now in the Me Too movement and as for the culture of women, how many of us are actually moving around in the world afraid? So I get every year around this time when the temperature starts to drop, it starts to get darker longer, right? People pass around these memes for women. Women, be careful. Watch out for white vans with dark windows. Watch out. I saw a video the other day. Somebody's leaving car seats, and I don't know if it's true or not, but the video was like, if you see an empty car seat as a woman, don't go towards the car seat. It's a trap. Say this is how they snatch women, right? So there's all these cues and signals everywhere for women to be afraid. Right? You're a woman who's been raped by a man and you have a daughter, 9 times out of 10, unless you've done serious internal focus, you're going to raise your daughter to be cautious of rape victims at every turn. Everywhere you go, watch out for this, watch out for that. If you're on the subway, do this. Don't go here, don't go there, right? So you're creating a energetic resonance of fear. So her daughter might not attract the man that rapes her. She might just attract an emotionally abusive man because she's been baked in an environment of fear, right? So if you have been through a traumatic experience, number one, master teacher conversation. This was a master teacher. Let's figure out what the lesson was. If you've been raped, etc., all the traumas, right? There's always a light at the end of the tunnel and a way to make sense of this. If you can start looking at it spiritually and not just from your physical life, so to speak, right? This is the sexual relationships that we as women take on, right? If you keep having sex with men, you're not cultivating emotional relationships and mental companionship. You're not creating substantive relationships. You're going to keep attracting men that are going to dog you out, right? So now you're like, why do I keep getting dogged out? Men is the problem. No, you're cultivating relationships with men that end up leading you to these type of, this type of outcome, right? So I think that there's so many triggers around us that keep this rage against the divine feminine going, right? I talked about, this, I get very strong, wicked, spurts of sexual perversion from men that I interact with online, right? Porn, all this madness, penis pics, all of this stupidity right? I get these influxes of energy coming from random strangers towards me. And you could say, well, ZaZa, what are you resonating to attract that type of energy, right? That's one way that people could look at that. But in the bigger picture, if Cardi B and Megan Thee Stallion and Amber Rose and all of these other females that are just straight focusing, keeping men locked on their sexual energy, if that's the broader consensus of the culture, then of course, Sister Moot and ZaZaAli and all of these other women that are trying to raise the vibration are going to be targets for that type of energy. Because what the hell are you talking about? Stop talking about that metaphysics and put on a push-up bra and show me what you're working with. You know what I'm saying? So I think that women are our ecosystem. Me and you are doing our part. That's why I wrote the book, right? To bring awareness to this. As women, it should be very not frightening, but we should be very aware that there's nowhere on the planet that women are actually safe. But men should be much more focused and conscientious of the fact, and African men in particular should be conscious and cognizant. This will have nothing to do with the white men, of the fact that there's nowhere on the planet that African women are actually safe. You see what I'm saying? And as a man, there's never been any collective movement to change that. Never. So that's the thing that I need men to stop. And you can science it up. You can do your part however you feel. But let's just make a mental note of that. And we need to keep the white man out of the conversation because you were here first. So whatever he did with your permission or with your complicity or implicity, or you see what I'm saying? You can't say I'm the father and then start blaming the child, right? So that level of awareness and ownership. Don't tell me you're the head of the household, but then you don't really want to be the head of the household. Don't tell me it's your job to protect and provide, but then you don't really want to protect and provide. Stop with the narratives of what manhood is supposed to be if you're not really going to be committed to that. You know what I mean?
I hear that. And it's important that you say that, because I think again, it keeps going back to that accountability.
Yeah.
Yeah, it keeps going back to your integrity, and like what the content of your character. Yeah,
Yes.
keeps coming back round to cultivating that character.
Yes.
I wanted to move it on slightly to the 5 love languages, and a lot of people obviously are aware of the 5 love languages already. Words of affirmation. I'll if you haven't already, I'll come across them and relay them off for you. So, words of affirmation, quality time, receiving gifts, and physical touch, and acts of service.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I saw something really interesting this week, actually. And I quite like the conversation for the love languages. I think it's very important, and it's an important conversation that families can have, and, understanding, how each member of your family or partner, people resonate. But I also saw something really interesting this week, and I wanted to, I suppose, understand what you might have thought about this. It said, in terms of the love languages, it says you self-destruct in the opposite way of your love language.
Mm.
And I thought, wow. And
Mm.
you know what I thought was really powerful about that? I can totally see. Yeah, my thing for me is quality time and acts of service, right? That's mine. Yeah.
That's
But
what
I
you
also
want, or that's what you give.
that's my love language. Yeah.
Okay.
Quality time and acts of service. But I also recognize that when I heard that this week, I said, raw, because I can get to see that, look, I give to myself, and like I said at the beginning, this book shows you the areas that you are not, if you're giving to yourself in certain areas, it will show you it and highlight where you're not. Yeah.
Mm.
And, are you really looking after self? Yeah. And one of the things I got to see in that is that actually, when it comes to, if I looked at it from the self-destructive capacity, what I really got to see actually is that when it comes to giving quality time to myself, I don't do enough of that.
Mm.
And I don't do enough. Like I said, remember I was talking about your books, talking about your book and getting the book for myself.
Mm-hmm.
I don't, and acts of service, this is something that I don't necessarily give to myself enough.
Yes.
And I just thought, what?
Yeah.
That blew me away, right?
Sometimes the question is more important than the answer, because even through you just sitting back and kind of like walking yourself through it, it gave you a revelation, you know what I mean, about you. That's what it does.
And then it took it to another level, because it meant that I wouldn't, in this piece, it was talking about completely discarding that after that. But I would say now, again, it goes back to law of attraction, put it inside of yourself to receive it. Yeah. So it makes sense that, okay, actually, that's my love language. Okay. But am I giving those things to myself?
Yeah.
Yeah. Am I looking at, I know that's what it is. And I might know yours, and I might know mine, and I might know his, but does he give that to himself?
Yeah, exactly. And this is okay. So this is because this is, and my brothers who are watching this, whether you're watching it now or whether you watch it when I post it up on my channel, like, I need you to understand what she's talking about right now and what we're talking about. They always ask me, how do we heal the problems between men and women? Like, we got to get this together. What do you think? Like, they ask me these simple questions with really big answers, right? This is it. This is the key right here, right? So you have these 5 love languages. This book is written about relationships, right? It's even really for married people. Like, I had to change some of the language and kind of, change wife or husband to partner, or, because it's specifically a marriage book, right? But the things that it's talking about are things that human beings need to thrive, not survive, to thrive, right? So when we talk about words of affirmation, quality time, being of service, giving gifts, if we all made those things priorities with ourselves, right? You're natural. If you've made that a healthy habit to treat yourself that way, there's no way you wouldn't treat a person that you actually love that way. You love people better when you love yourself. because you're not
True.
expecting them to give you something that you already
You
made.
don't give this. That's right. That's right.
So, excuse me. This is what was interesting for me, right? And everything you're talking about, but then what about all the men that are in our lives that we aren't in relationships with? Do our uncles need words of affirmations? Do our brothers need quality of time? Do our homeboys that we went to school with or to college need being of service to and gift giving and love offerings? So I send my male friends gifts, random gifts. Here's some vitamins. Get it together. You know what I'm saying? here's some iron. Right? Right? Act of love. But you have no idea what, especially men that aren't really taking care of themselves or that are
always service are key for men that don't take care of themselves.
Right? And I'm not having relationships with men that you're not in relationships with. Because this whole book is about, love, your intimate partner. And that's great. It's wonderful. But how many men are there in the world that are not experiencing this at all, in relationships with women, in half-cocked relationships, or single, right? So I think if we start to apply the 5 love languages and this idea towards self first, obviously, right? And then starting to sprinkle that kind of love to the men that are in our culture and in our communities, right? I think it'll have ripple effects in the long term. Yes.
Absolutely. And then we kind of start to round it off with the honoring thy temple. Yeah. And you start talking about the hormones, the STDs. We call them STIs now these days over here. The emotions of sex, the chakra system, birth control methods. I think those are kind of really important. This is a really lovely section for young people. I really saw that, really being able to kind of, who's going to tell you and who's going to tell you quite like this.
Yes.
Yeah. And so that it's not a shock when you come into your cycle. And it's almost like your book is like a hug. It's a cradle.
Yeah.
It's a cradle.
Yeah.
It cradles you so that you're in a position where you can actually look, let's cradle you before it happens.
Yeah, exactly.
Or while it's happening, there's that cushion. That's how your book kind of operates, like a lovely cushion.
Thank you. That was the intention. And that
excellent.
When I sat back and thought about an 18-year-old or 19-year-old reading through this stuff and starting to be a little bit more conscientious about who she gives her body to, and just the idea of being sexually disciplined at that age, or how your body is functioning, what's happening when you actually have an orgasm, when I started my cycle, my father took me to the store and told the lady, the cashier, show her what to get. We didn't have a conversation about what's actually happening in your body. No family members came through. There was no celebration of walking into womanhood, even though I've seen women do those type of things. And then that section, knowing what to go in the store and actually buy. If you don't have somebody present in your life, you know what I mean? Being able to take care of your body down there. It's a science. You know what I mean? You can't just you got to wipe yourself a certain type of way. You got to wear a certain type of underwear. You can't use you shouldn't be using douching at all. Right. But just all of those little things that matter that you kind of learn by mistake or trial and error. You know what I mean? You use a douching product and now you got a bacterial vaginosis. So you got to go to the doctor and take pills and all this stuff. Or you can just read the workbook and learn that you shouldn't do that in the first place. Right. But that's what we're as women supposed to be doing for the girls behind us. I'm mad at myself I didn't do it sooner. I'm not mad at myself I didn't do it sooner. I did it right on time. But we as women got to take accountability for this ecosystem of women. It's not just about watching other women bump their heads and then say, yes, we all made it up the mountain, even though we all struggled to get here. No, I don't want you to have to walk up the mountain if you can walk across the street. You know what I mean? We need to be collective and in a cohesive kind of mindset to be pulling other women up, not just the fake sisterhood circles. There's a lot of fake sisterhood healing. Let's all come together in our trauma and talk about what men aren't doing right. And then let's do some stripper dances and pass out crystals and we all go off into the sunset. That's what's happening in a lot of these groups. And I deal with a lot of women who have gone to those groups and it was like, it was insanity. I can't believe I paid money for this, but you get what I'm saying. This is the real deal nitty gritty internal stuff that people run from. No, we need to start being more welcoming and inviting towards other women, not just because they have on cute shoes or because you like their hair. Or because you putting up an Instagram post and you want everybody, y'all wearing white and floating across the beach, and then you leave and you back to square one. You know what I'm saying? And not taking anything away. I'm being funny, but you understand what I'm saying.
Yeah, I know. I think, no, I mean, we're making light of it, but the work is important. Yeah.
Yes.
And we have to, it's important to see the humor in this. As we do, one of the things about this work, I'd say as a disclaimer on some level, look, the work is deep that you're going to go through inside of this book. Yeah. You have to have a sense of humor to deal with yourself.
Yes, you do.
Yeah. You have to have a sense of humor to laugh at that. Like, we're looking at, okay, where we could have been stuck. And, the first port of call when it comes to transformation is awareness and acknowledgement.
Yes.
Yeah. And so we have to be, get to that. If we don't acknowledge it, we can't work on it.
That's
yeah.
Right.
So we have to get to a point where, okay, you've had an epiphany. Like when I was talking about the elder daughter syndrome. Okay, great. But also I get to see how I can laugh about it. Yeah. I can also look at the fact that, that's cold. Yes, it might have taken something from me at a particular point. Yeah. It may have created some level of strain at some point. Yeah. Because I know I was doing my exams at the time when it was happening. Yeah. I was studying for my exams at the time. So it was tricky to balance, exams and being a parent, like 15. Yeah. But at the same time, so when I was in it, of course, I didn't really know the power of it at that time. Yeah. And we have to understand that some of these lessons, and, we say it loosely, but it is true. Yeah. Lessons, are blessings.
Yes, they are.
Yeah. And so, looking at that, being able to laugh and smile at those things,
And so let me say this while this thought comes to me, right? So now with that trajectory of your life, now as a full woman, you have a responsibility to that younger you, right? And the way that you can kind of bring that, and you've probably already done this, but I'm just saying for women who have been in this position, is to honor and to give that child within you and to give yourself permission to be childlike.
That's right.
Right.
Playfulness.
Playful.
We have lost the art. I was having this conversation before in on the other shows that we did. And or in one of the other shows, it's like we suffer from seriousness.
Yes.
Yeah. And we have to just be in a position where we can take stock and laugh at, our idiosyncrasies. Yeah. We're like, we got stuff. We've got little isms and schisms, all of us in our own right. Yeah. Yes. And we have to learn that, again, having sons, I've got no choice but to be playful. You're like, they're not having it. They're not having the, it's all about baking and making daisy chains. They're not having that life. Yeah. We're not trying to have that. Yeah, they're like, it's playtime.
They want to swing,
play badminton,
play in the dirt. Yes. That's the beauty.
And I'm one of those hands-on type of parents anyway. I don't mind getting muddy and climbing trees and that kind of stuff. I don't mind. But playfulness is important, and to cultivate that playfulness, that youthful energy inside of yourself. People say, oh, you look so young, you look so well. I just turned, I was born in 76, right? So you guys can work that out. Thank you, girl. Yes. And but it's playfulness. I personally, I say fun keeps you young. Yes. Yeah, that's one of my little sayings right there. I am like, people say, oh, well, how do you do it? It's not really anything. I am a playful person. Yeah. I enjoy when I'm serious. I'm very serious. When I'm focused, I'm very focused. But when I'm playful, I'm like, I'm all in. Yeah. And playfulness is an art. And a lot of us, yes, we are in serious times. But it's important for us to find the humor in these times as well, for our emotional and spiritual and physical well-being. Yeah. Yeah. And having that level of playfulness, but again, back to balance. Yeah. That importance, that balance of life is very serious, and there are really important things to deal with. Yeah. But also our children also need to see the balance of that, and that we are ascending from this.
And I think this is a great, when you start looking at the world from a spiritual vantage point, right? And from God consciousness, that type of mentality, it's like you can look at all of this as a game, right? You have this wonderful, all powerful soul, right? That is a part of the bigger, cosmic soup, so to speak. So you have this this individual soul that's a part of the collective consciousness, right? You came here and chose to have a certain type of experience, right? I'm obviously a warrior. I wanted to come set it off, right? So I'm clear on kind of why my life shaped and molded me to where I am right now. But in the bigger scheme of, because I used to be mad, like, oh, I wish I wasn't so fiery all the time. Like I don't want to be as fiery, but it's like now in the time where spiritual warriors are needed more than ever, like, yes, thank you for that fire. Thank you for that passion. Thank you for that nonstop driving, insane, thing that I have about myself of wanting to figure something out and understand it, right? So I can look back whereas everybody's kind of like just now sitting up and getting serious. Well, I've been serious my whole entire life. I have suffered from being super serious, right? Because I had to. I didn't grow up with parents. I had to be very mature at a young age. But now that I've paid the cost to be the boss, so to speak, I did my time being in the series. Now I'm kind of sitting back and looking at this whole thing like, oh, you really think you're going to be God? You really think your machines are going to actually take over? Oh, you really think the Matrix is? Oh, you guys actually think you can beat our ancestors? It's funny. Bill Gates, you're so cute. You're such a cute little wicked peasant. You know what I'm saying? Psychopath, evil, wicked, demonic. You are so cute. You think you can beat the Lord of the Worlds. That's the playful. And no, let me be clear. There's some very scary stuff going on. But in the big scheme of things, my God versus your God, oh, bless your heart. Bless your heart. It's cute you're trying. You know what I'm saying? So that's that play. And we're stronger when we do that, when we come together, right? So me and you building a relationship, and the women around you are a part of that relationship, and the women around me are a part of that relationship, and my connection here and your connection there. Like, we may be few in numbers, but the power that we have on a spiritual level with the gods that are backing us, oh please, it's cute. Keep trying. You know what I'm saying? And that's really how I feel about it.
Got some laughter in the comments here. So we're going to wrap up the show. I just thank you for bless, somebody says something so sweet. Looking fabulous on your divine light system. Yes, thank you so much. Give thanks. So I want to wrap up the show, and I just want I just want the people to I suppose know where they can get hold of your book. I know I've managed to have an e-copy. We have to have a conversation about distribution, sis. Yeah, we're gonna have to have a side conversation about getting the book over here, getting some work done. Yeah, seriously. Yeah, it's on. Yeah.
And it's better that way anyway, because with shipping and everything the way it is, you know what I mean? Like if you want to, or someone there wants to place in wholesale orders, and you kind of be the place that can distribute out in the UK and in Europe, I'm totally down for that.
Okay, excellent. Yeah, I think somebody asked about the book that we were talking about, actually. We were talking about David Dada's book, The Way of the Superior Man. Yeah. That is referenced in the Keys to Womanhood. It's been a fantastic conversation. I know me and you can chop it up all day. Yeah. All day. Yeah, but I recognize, people want to go bed out here, and it's 10 o'clock over here at night. But I really appreciate it. I want people to be able to get hold of you. So let me just get your handle up. If you haven't come across ZaZaAli before, well, you've just been in for a treat today. Yeah. So, I really give thanks that you've come into this space. She has her links in the bio, etc. So I'm sure that, you can just go into her Insta and you'll just find what you need right there. Yeah, just don't be a stranger, sis. Yeah, like, I think this
Oh,
is
I
a really
know. I think
powerful time.
you have established a special, you and your whole team. Anytime you guys want me to come on and speak, I'm there, and I just want to let you know how much I appreciate. I've been saying that the world is in need of divine feminine guidance, and it is, and it is really one of the greatest, things that we can impart right now. It's what the world has needed for a long time, but really hasn't had in any capacity, right? Our preachers, our imams, our spiritual leaders, right? Like, men have been on the scene, good, bad, indifferent, whatever you want to call it, but they have been on their square trying to figure it out, making mistakes, whatever you want to call it. But women, we've kind of been sitting in the back, fiddling our thumbs, right? And watching it all go down. So now where we're in this area where we're moving towards the age of Aquarius, we have to come back to the center, and the masculine and feminine energy come back into cohesion. So this is why women have to stand up and be stronger and be louder. Strong, not like, hear me roar, but strong, like internally focused. And I know who I am, and I know what I know, and I am that I am. Right? That type of mindset needs to be prevalent in our women in order to help this planet and humanity get out of this situation that we're in right now. So thank you. And the thing that I want to impart everyone with is love. Love is the highest frequency, and the highest frequency always wins. So you don't try to love things that you have to force yourself to love. Nobody's telling Africans to love white people, right? But you have to love yourself enough to let white people go. And when I say let white people go, I'm not just talking about the government infrastructure, or the taxes and all the things that we think about, but I'm talking about letting go of the need to be at war with white people, letting go of the concept of white supremacy and the ideology of white supremacy, letting go of exposing the white man being your only point of focus. You expose the white man, but expose God. You know what I'm saying? Our men and our women should be bringing people closer to self, closer to God, closer to love. That first frequency has to be earned, right? Those original beings came out as first frequency. We're a long way from that, right? So the concept and the idea of first frequency now has to be earned. And first frequency is love, always. So emit love, study love, right? Immerse yourself in love. And if there's nobody around you to love you, then, go back to the 5 love languages and practice those things on yourself, right? There's no shortage of people that need compassion. There's no shortage of people in your family that need a word. There's no shortage of people on social media that need positivity, right? So if you want to know where to start, just start with love and find a way to emanate it, to express it, and to be it.
I hear that. Give thanks, sis. I just got a message here from Kwame. He said that he did try to get in on the live on air. I didn't see in the back there, beloved, and I didn't see a note or anything inside of the chat, so I apologize for that. But we will have our sister back. Don't worry about that. So just be ready for when we do that. And another conversation that has happened. I think someone is keen for you to go into the conversation about the concubine, and so we will resume that conversation at another time. But I appreciate you, sis. I'm going to put you in backstage while I complete this. We'll chop it up a little minute. Don't worry, don't go anywhere, stay there. It will look like I'm gone, but I'm not. So yeah, I just want to say thank you so much for coming into the space. Yeah, you're a powerful sister, and our sisters, it is really time for this sister, to let loose on our sisters over here. I know we've had others in our community. I know the work of Queen Afua, or the work of Deborah Jackson Gandhi, Sacred Pampering Principles. And this book to me is like a combination of those, actually. Yeah, they're very powerful books. And this is like a combination brought into a new hemisphere. And it's very, very important and crucial for our development, especially now when our young people are at a place where they're in and out of school because of this structure. they're not getting the adequate maybe education, or their education is being interrupted in so many different ways, and so in so many different facets through this thing.
So and their parents are stressed out, and
that's right. So people are not gonna, so some of the things we have to understand, that some of the things may get missed, not because of intent, just that things will get missed because these distractions are, you know, the distraction's strong over there. And so it's just reining ourselves in. And if you've got daughters, this is a must have. Kwanzaa's coming, family. This is an excellent time for you to gift your family this gift, the women in your family this gift. I think it's really important. I think also for men, men could learn a lot from reading this book, and how they themselves can translate that into the work that they can do on themselves, because women are doing a lot of work, and often we are finding, okay, well, you know, we're evolving and we're elevating. And I've had conversations, you know, who's teaching the men? And there's conversations I'm having with men at the moment who want me to teach particular things. We may have to do a class together, girl. And
we need, you know, I said men who can't God, a man who refuses to learn from a woman is a fool, a woman with nothing to teach him, even more so. Right. So if you are a woman and you aren't in your personality qualified to go out into the world and teach men not how to be men, how to be mental, spiritual, emotional, and physical, well-rounded beings. I'm not trying to teach men how to be men. That's why I said I'm going to.
You just look. The thing is, what our role as women is about enhancement. We enhance. We're not here to control. We're not here to fix you. But we have the gift of enhancement. Simply by the divine right of having a womb. It gives us the vision. Particular vision that, you know, no other beings can have. And so therefore with us when we carry our sons or carry our daughters, we're already envisaging their future, their bone structure, their jaw, what they're going to look like, what they're going to be like. We've already got it locked. Into our subconscious, and sometimes obviously in our conscious. So when we bring those elements to relationships, we also, what's important is that we're embraced for those feminine qualities. Those things are, if you like, you know, when you talk about transferable skills, they're transferable. And and the way, you know, a lot of men say, you know, women are too masculine and they're not feminine enough and all this kind of thing. But allow us, to contribute to you. Allow us to enhance whatever it is you're about at this point, without necessarily fixing you. Being able to listen and be a receiver of women is half the work.
Yes, it is.
It's half the work.
Amen. Let the church say amen.
Don't let me get started now. We're trying to close down the show now.
That's a fact right there.
But being able to receive, like I know when a relationship, personally, just to complete this, I know when a relationship is over, when you can no longer reach them. When you can't reach them here anymore or here, it's over. You might not have physically left, but you're on the way out. And so we've got to get to a point where allowing that contribution, not a woman, you know, a woman doing everything for you and all this kind of conversation we had before about submissive. Those conversations are kind of irrelevant.
It's child's play at this point. Like, come on, man.
At the end of the day, we need to be getting to know each other all over again from a whole new platform.
And we're not trying to raise a new generation of submissive women. Let's be clear. We're trying to raise a generation of mentally, spiritually, emotionally, and physically sound, harmonious women and human beings, because those type of women attract righteous relationships and have balance and righteous energy in those relationships, right? You have to teach women about those type of things that don't know themselves, right? So if we rear and nurture our women to aspire to their highest and best capabilities and who they have the potential to become, everything will fall in alignment. But we can't be raising women and raising and raising girls around how they relate to men. That's why we're in the situation we're in now, because weaponized sexuality, which is what Cardi B and Megan Thee Stallion are, that is a residual of growing up in a world that is set up to be based around men, right? So we want fully operational and high capacity women and high vibrational beings first, and then we can have conversations about attracting the right type of relationships and partnerships to those women. ZaZaAli.com is my website. I forgot to say that. Thank you so much, Queen, for having me with you, and I'll be back soon. And peace and love to everybody in the UK.
All right, sis, I'm going to put you backstage, and then I'm going to complete the show, and then we're going to